All right, how's it going, everybody? My name is SBL. I'm the Guild Master of the Guild of Legends, located in the heart of the multiverse. And today, as opposed to our usually scheduled Starbound stream, we're doing some look into the recently released Unearthed Arcana for the One D&D playtest of expert classes. This is the second Unearthed Arcana that they've put out for this playtest for new products that are coming in 2023 or something like that. Maybe 2024. I don't remember when they said something like that though. One of those. This one is on expert classes. That is Bard, Ranger, Rogue. Kind of versatile classes tend to be really good with various with an assortment of skills and other non-combat things in addition to their obvious combat capabilities. So I haven't looked at this one yet at all, so we're going to be going into this completely blind. I've seen some people have been talking about it online, but haven't delved too much into it because I wanted to get a pretty good a good run through of it here. So right at the top, there's kind of the first page that usually gets overlooked in Unearthed Arcanas. It's a lot of the same thing. All of the One D&D playtest stuff, I'm sure, is going to be talking about like the player level. Unearthed Arcana is always, mention stuff on the feedback and everything like that. This is kind of nice to give you an idea of what is coming for the playtests for the time being. Up to this point, we've had just kind of some base rules and some of the basics covered. Now we're getting into the classes, so that's good to see here. Let's get into it. Again, completely fresh into this one, so we're gonna see what we think about this. I was pretty on board with the previous one. I think that there were a lot of good changes to the stock 5e rule set in the One D&D playtest materials. So I have decently high hopes for this one as well. Parts of the class. So this is kind of breaking down what a class is. I guess the idea of this, what they have to include in these materials is a little bit of everything that you might want to know relevant to these kinds of playtests. So, characters that have levels in a class are exceptional. Most of the inhabitants of the multiverse aren't members of a class. Yep. Primary ability. Critical to some of your class features. Create a character with ability is a great place to put one of your highest scores. To use the multi-classing rules, you must have a score of 13 with primary ability of all of your classes. You gain ability score improvement feat, consider increasing your primary ability. That all seems to be the same as usual. The multi-classing rules have worked that way up to this point. And obviously you want to have your primary ability for your class be one of your best scores to maximize on what your primary toolkit is. Class groups. Okay, so this is something that they haven't really done in writing. I think people have always kind of separated various classes into groups, but this is interesting because with experts, Rogue and Bard make sense to me. I wouldn't have assumed they'd put Ranger in there, but I can understand. And here it seems like what they're doing with that is that they're dropping expertise on all of the experts. That's going to the Ranger as well, apparently, which is something that Ranger never had before. Ranger's always been something with 5e that people have had a lot of issues with. So I'm eager to see what they've done here to make it an expert. For Majors, you have Sorcerer, Warlock, and Wizard. which I'll use arcane magic. That makes sense. Priests, cleric, druid, and paladin. Again, I feel like those fit together really well. I feel like a lot of people don't group the druid with these classes. It's usually a group of 2, but it makes sense to me. Stewards of divine or primal magic, focusing on healing, utility, and defense. Makes sense. And then warriors are barbarian, fighter, and monk. And I think that makes sense as well. Interesting that they put monk with the warriors. I don't think a lot of people would have thought about that, but I could be wrong as well. I, at the very least, don't often see it that way. I always thought of monks as more of a high utility kind of a character as opposed to just straight up combat focus. The artificer is also an expert. It's interesting. That class appears in Tasha's Cauldron and Everything and Eberron, Rising from the Last War, and not the player's handbook, which is why it's not included on the list here. Dark Tower. Rangers always seemed between expert and a priest in relation to these new class groups. I feel making them an expert will give Rangers a better defined role. Yeah, that's a good point. I think in my mind I always grouped Druid and Ranger together because they in D&D and such, Rangers are a magical class. Normally, at least in 5e, and to some degree in older editions as well, I believe. But the magic that they both tap into would be typically seen as primal magic as opposed to divine or arcane. But I do think that the groups that they've put here make a lot of sense, and it feels really kind of classic RPG, warriors, priests, mages, and experts. Seems very, like, makes me think of like very old school TTRPGs and things like shoot, I'm trying to think of the kind of arcade hack and slash game that I used to play all the time, and I can't think of the name. But you know, your character classes were like Valkyrie and Barbarian and Ranger and stuff like that. But warrior, priest, mages, and experts, the names of it thematically feels on point with that kind of concept. A class group has no rules in itself, but prerequisites and other rules can refer to these groups. For example, only members of the mage group might be able to attune to a particular magic item, or a feat might be available to only members of the warrior group. That makes sense. I think one thing I've noticed with the previous playtest is that they seem to be focusing more on keywords that interact with each other and that help clarify certain rules. And I think that this class groups, similar to the spell lists, is just another way to kind of make use of that utility. These class groups may tie into Tasha's sidekicks, so maybe those will be tuned later as well. That's a good point. I think Warrior, Mage, and Expert is actually the names of all of the sidekicks. They don't have a priest, though, which is something that I dealt with recently in one of my games. Dark Tower, you might know, as a player in one of those games. So I had to kind of just make do with some homebrew shenanigans on top of the base the base sidekick rules. When creating a party of adventurers, one way to form a well-rounded group is to include at least one member of each class group. That said, mix and match classes to your heart's content. That is also a good thing to go by. Like, normally, a lot of people with MMOs and other multiplayer RPGs kind of have the mindset of DPS, tank, healer as kind of the class group breakdown, but D&D is such a much more versatile and fluid kind of game system, as well as many TTRPGs, that trying to find a better way to break up the class groups makes a lot of sense from that MMO standard. Vector Spaceman has gone. Ranger definitely got more magical in 5e. Beforehand, there was an explicitly magical archer class called a Seeker, which was like a cross between a Ranger Druid. Good to know. Yeah, I've always been fan of non-magical Rangers myself, so the 5e Ranger was always kind of missed me because of how much the magic tied into it. Very interested in these new playtests and such, having lived through all the hubbub that was D&D Next in the run-up to 5e. That's an interesting perspective. I didn't have that. I got into D&D 5e sometime after, I think a year or two in to its first published books, so I don't have the perspective of going through the playtest short of other 5e Unearthed Arcanas. Create a member of the class. Class's description includes a section on how to create a member of that class. That section tells you how to determine hit points, proficiencies, armor training, equipment. All right, so giving more of a breakdown on kind of what the different sections mean, it seems like. More stuff that is, described typically in the player's handbook. But we will keep an eye out for anything that might be mentioned differently here, as far as I can tell. This features a list on the class table, detailed in class description. That seems to be as expected. Class description is followed by a section dedicated to subclasses for that class. Subclass represents an area of specialization for a member of that class, and the subclass grants special features at certain levels. One thing I would like to see about subclasses is to have the point where every class gets their subclass and the levels in which they get their subclass bonuses made more uniform. I feel like there's really no rhyme or reason to each class having its own determination when it gets various subclass abilities, with the exception of certain things where they get more abilities than others for one reason or another, or ones that get it right at the beginning as opposed to others that get it partway into their campaign experience. Though I feel like, honestly, with 5e character creation, there's a lot of flexibility. You can make very interesting characters, but in terms of the core game mechanics, if you're looking at, like, say, for example, just the player's handbook, you are very limited in the options you get to pick, right? You have your class, you have your background, you have your race, possibly a sub-race. You have your class. Once you pick that, it's kind of set. Once you pick your background, that's set. There's no further options broken down within those, really, with the exception of spellcasters, which get to pick their spells and stuff like that. But I feel like being able to pick your subclass right out the gate at level 1 would make level 1 more interesting for everyone. There are other issues with level 1 and such in D&D 5e, but in regards specifically to subclasses, I feel like having everything uniform, the levels in which they gain subclass based stuff uniform would make sense. Same with ability score increases. I don't see why, with the exception of things like Rogue and Fighter, who get more of those than everyone else. Obviously, you can't make those uniform if they're giving you a different amount, but I do think that the levels for those for everyone should be the same, and for the most part they are, but there's a slight variance because of these different count classes. When playtesting a new version of the class, this is just about playtesting, so I don't think that is something I'm going to be too concerned with. Because I'm not looking into actually playtesting, I'm just looking into what it does. All right, 3 class highlights. All 3 classes have new features as well as revised versions of old features. When a class offers a decision, a suggested choice is usually presented. That's nice. Makes it maybe a little bit easier for new players to see, kind of the quick build option. Each class's old 20th level feature has moved to 18th level, opening up 20th level for epic boons. That's interesting. I'm curious to see how that plays out. And from there, we get right into the classes. All right, so starting with the Bard here, which I will bring up the current version of the Bard on D&D Beyond in case I want to refer back to that. But for the time being, I think we're probably getting a description of kind of the class identity, the class fantasy of the Bard here. Maybe some ideas about how they work and stuff like that. Possibly some lore on how their magic works. Doesn't look too much like anything of any game mechanics note, but if there is anything in this section that I am missing, I would absolutely appreciate it if people could call that out and let me know. I'll definitely take a look. But jumping down into their class list, which is probably a bunch of nonsense for people who don't know 5e or D&D super well. You got the general breakdown of prepared spells. Why is it worded as prepared spells? Is there something I forgot about that instead of spell slots? I'll have to see if that's described in their spellcasting section. Their cantrip breakdown, how many cantrips they get, their bardic die, which is likely going to relate to their bardic inspiration and probably some other features since it's called the bardic die and not the inspiration die. I believe that would typically it was typically worded differently. Oh, actually, you know what? That's not something that they included on the previous class tables, which is a nice inclusion here. You don't have to read through the block of text that is the relevant features to see what the die is. You just have it based on your level here, which is fantastic. Right out the gate, they get the bardic inspiration and their spellcasting. Pretty much what you would expect, and pretty much how it was laid out already. And you have your proficiency bonus. It's interesting that they're listing this now as feat as opposed to ability score increase. That's another change to the wording of these tables. Previously, it was ability score increase and feats were an optional rule that were largely used by most groups. So I suppose maybe with One D&D, feats are no longer being considered optional, as opposed to just a core part of the game, which I think is a great perspective for them to have and more incentive for the developers to put more focus into the feats. I think there was probably a fair amount of focus in them already, just due to the widely used nature of them, but right out the gate, they were kind of a side thing, so it wasn't probably looked into as heavily as other class features and stuff like that. Create a Bard. Consult the following lists, which provide hit points, proficiencies, and armor training. If you're making a first level character, also consult the starting equipment section. And if you're using the multi-classing rules, see the multi-classing and the Bard section. So having the multi-classing related to the character included in their class area makes a lot of sense to me, as opposed to having to go to the multi-classing rules specifically. I think including it with the classes makes a lot of sense. The wording seems to be ability score improvement feat, so maybe ASIs and feats are combining, such as having a +1 and a minor feat. That'll be interesting to see. Hopefully, I think they have feats later in the section here, so later in the document, so we'll have to look into that. All right, so now the breakdown of what they get, pretty similar to what you would expect to stock 5e here. Same hit die, okay, armor is down here as opposed to up here. That's interesting that they separate that out. I'm not sure why they do that. Their weapons, they have changed it up to now it's just simple weapons. They used to have an assortment of specific martial weapons as well. They no longer have that. So I wonder if maybe you'll only see like long swords and rapiers and short swords and such in the domain of a specific bardic subclass now. Musical instruments, same as usual. Dexterity and charisma saving throws, as usual. And skills, okay, that's interesting. So they give you a list of specific skills, but then also say you can take any 3 skills of your choice. So I think that's kind of leaning into that idea of like a quick build set of options, which is, I think, pretty good. They always had a quick build section on the classes in the PHB, but some things didn't have those. I think certain extra materials didn't have those and stuff like that, which was always unfortunate. But it seems like they're leaning into it a little bit heavier by including it in things like the skills and probably also in your spells and stuff like that, I would assume, if they're doing it here. This is good. Starting equipment, they include the starting money if you decide to go that route, as opposed to, again, having that information tucked away in an entirely different section of the book. And it's interesting because it's no longer a die roll, it's just a flat value, which is probably a more comfortable choice so that you don't get people who roll like 40 gold as opposed to 100 or 120 or what have you. I like how they're listing this out. And here they have the equipment that you would start with. It's interesting that you get the short sword, unless the short sword is now a simple weapon. But that would be an interesting choice. Not necessarily a bad one, but an interesting one for sure. But otherwise, yeah, this looks pretty good to me. I like the way that they're laying it out. I would hope to see a little bit more formatting in this. I do feel like having the items separated out like this is better than just having a written out sentence that they would do previously. But it does, as with kind of the nature of this, I'm sure they could pretty this up with formatting and graphics when actually published. So, as it is, looks good to me. Multiclassing and the Bard. Ability score minimum 13 in the Bard's primary ability charisma. And they make it clear that you have to have it in for taking a level in this class or another class if you're already a Bard. That's a part that a lot of people miss. So hopefully having it here as opposed to having the multiclassing rules separated will make things much more clear for people. Having the proficiencies right up front. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. What did I just do? Did I just highlight that? Is that a... Oh, I underlined. I've never done that before. Whoops. Anyway. The proficiencies for multiclassing is also something I've seen people miss a lot. Again, I think because the multiclassing rules were always in their own section, as opposed to with the classes, so people rarely saw them. They just heard the idea of multiclassing and decide, hey, that sounds like that's for me. I want to do that. So for that, you get a skill of your choice, a musical instrument of your choice. You get light armor, and you get add all your bard levels to the appropriate levels from other classes to determine your available spell slots for casting spells, as detailed in the multiclassing rules. So they still do refer you to a more detailed breakdown, but they do have the summary here, which is fantastic. I prepare spells for each of your classes individually, referring to spell slots of an individual class to determine the number and level of spells you prepare for it. That all sounds about the same. I would have to look at the detailed multiclassing rules to see if there is any change there, but it sounds like it's probably going to be kept the same as it should be. I'm not the biggest fan of how multiclassing in 5e works compared to other systems, but I do think that it works well enough for what it is. All right, now we're getting into the actual features of the class. So let's look here at the Bardic Inspiration. So you can use your Bardic Inspiration die in the following ways. Heal. Okay. Interesting. Boost D20 test. When another creature within 60 feet of you that you can see or hear fails a D20 test, you can use your reaction to give a Bardic Inspiration die. The creature then rolls that die, adds to the D20, potentially turning the failure into a success. That is pretty drastically changed from the previous version where you had to preemptively give out Inspiration. You still had that 60-foot range. The dice were still the same. And when you did that, since you were giving it preemptively, it would last for 10 minutes. And let's see here. And the person using it had to know, or had to use it, had to choose to use the bonus before they knew the result of whatever their D20 roll was. So this, I think, is interesting. You can't preempt it, so you can't set someone up for success with this. But you don't have potentially wasted Bardic Inspirations by giving it to someone who just ends up never using it. And here, the player using it knows they've already failed when you choose to give it to them. So we already know the full results of the situation. You don't necessarily know what you need to get. That's up to the DM, if they're the type to tell you what your DC is. But you already know that you need the die when you go to use it. So I like that aspect of it. I like that change. It'd be interesting to see if there would be an option later on to be able to preemptively give it to someone. But, you know, overall, I think this is a nice change. I think this is a good way to run Inspiration. And moving on from that to healing, this is a feature that Bardic Inspiration never had previously, unless it was tucked into a subclass that I'm less familiar with. Immediately after another creature within 60 feet of you that you can see or hear takes damage, you can use your reaction to roll your Bardic Inspiration die and restore a number of hit points to the creature equal to the number rolled. So you can do a quick emergency heal as kind of a reaction to someone getting injured. That's pretty nice, and a nice bit of added utility to the bards. I often played bards as kind of a healer type character, so this is definitely in line with how I would typically like to run my bards. Bardic Inspiration die is expended when it's rolled. You can confer a Bardic Inspiration die a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus and regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. That has changed from having a number based on your charisma modifier that you would then regain on a long rest. So previously, assuming no magical items, you could have at most 5 uses of Bardic Inspiration. Here, if we go up here to the table, you can see the highest proficiency bonus is +6. So you would have to work up to that point that you would probably start with previously, because you would typically start a bard with probably at least a +3 in their charisma. Usually. Not always. But now you'll start with a +2, get up to a 3, then a 4, then a 5, and then a 6. So you probably start lower, but you get higher by the end of your adventuring career. At higher levels, your Bardic Inspiration die changes when you reach certain levels in this class, as shown on the Bardic die column of the Bard table. D8 at 5th level, D10 at 10th level, D12 at 15th level. Same kind of progression that they had previously. So no big changes there. All right, now we get into spellcasting. This is going to be kind of a big section, I think. Spellcasting is slightly a bit of an involved bit of rules. You've learned to cast spells through your bardic arts. Player's handbook for the rules on spellcasting. The information below details how you use those rules as a bard. You have following spells prepared: Color Spray, Disguise Self, Prestidigitation, and Vicious Mockery. Again, like I had mentioned before, that's kind of their quick build arrangement. Alternatively, you can prepare 2 0-level spells and 2 first-level spells of your choice. So the bards are preparing cantrips? Does this mean all spellcasters can change their cantrips? We'll see. We'll see. That might just be the wording they're using, and maybe when you prepare a cantrip, you're just locked in. Cantrip being a 0-level spell. But we will see. Any spell you can prepare for this class must be an arcane spell, so it has to be on the arcane spell list. And it must be from one of the following schools of magic: divination, enchantment, illusion, or transmutation. That's interesting because that would lock me out of healing spells, potentially, unless they have changed up where certain spells are listed. Because usually the healing spells are necromancy, I believe. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can practice your bardic arts and replace any spell you have prepared for this class with another arcane spell of the same level, abiding by the school restriction above. So this seems like this is changing up spellcasting a fair bit. There's still more to read here. And I think we'll go into that before I start breaking down what I'm thinking here. Let's see if maybe there's something I'm missing. But looks like you can swap cantrips all willy-nilly. It certainly does, based on what we've seen here. Well, yeah, every long rest. Every long rest, all willy-nilly. Those seem comparable, in my mind. At higher levels in this class, you can prepare more spells as shown on the bard table. The number there determines the number of different spells you can prepare of each level. For example, a 3rd level bard, you can prepare 2 different 0-level spells, 4 different 1st level spells, and 2 different 2nd level spells. Consult the Prepared Bard Spells section for recommendations on which spells to prepare at high levels. A spell marked with a dagger in that section is always prepared and can't be replaced when you prepare spells. I want to look back at this table. So this is prepared spells per spell level. So at 1st level, you can prepare 2 cantrips and 2 1st level spells. Now, again, I want to read on this, but if it's breaking down how many spells you prepare, but not spell slots, can you just cast these spells all willy-nilly? Can you cast each prepared spell once? If that is, can you prepare a single spell multiple times? Maybe we'll see. Again, I think I'm probably getting ahead of myself. Let's see, spell slots. Okay, there's a spell slot section here, probably going to answer my questions. The Bard table shows you how many spell slots you have at each level to cast your Bard spells at 1st level or higher. Where? Where does it tell me that? I feel like it doesn't tell me that. Unless the amount of spells you can prepare and the amount of spell slots you have are the same number. That's not really made clear here. The number of different spells you can prepare of each level equals the number of spell slots you have at that level. See, this is why I didn't want to start saying this stuff and getting ahead of myself, because I'm answered literally in the next sentence. Yep, they are the same number. I think that they could use some clarity on that on the class table, but it's at least good that they make it clear here. I feel like one problem with the spellcasting section of any given class, from what I've witnessed with players, is that a lot of people don't read the spellcasting section. They see spellcasting, maybe kind of breeze through it once on one class when they're just learning the game, and then never seem to read it again. But certain things very important to the individual classes are hidden within the text. This obviously is probably related to how generally spellcasting works on all classes, but it is important to fully understand the features of the class that you're playing. So make sure you read through your character features before you jump to conclusions. For example, as a 5th level bard, you have 4 first level spell slots, 3 second level spell slots, and 2 third level spell slots. And you can also prepare that many spells of those levels. Interesting. This is an interesting way of, I guess, consolidating things on the table and in the information. Charisma is your spellcasting ability for your bard spells. That makes sense. I would like to see more flexibility in core class abilities. Obviously, a wizard shouldn't be able to use strength for their spellcasting, probably, but I would like to see, like, for example, in another resource I use called Level Up Advanced 5th Edition, Warlocks can use Intelligence or Charisma. They get their choice when they're creating their character, which of these abilities to use. But hopefully, at the very least, I mean, Bards and Charisma, it's pretty, tied into each other. Hopefully, we'll see some variety on other classes. Yeah, Stock 5e was more freeform, where you could have 9 level 1 spells using these spell lists at level 5, or mix and match the spell slots. Yep, it certainly was. And I know, as like a wizard, for example, I would always have a lot of first level spells. Sometimes even just have a bunch of first level spells prepared, even if I'm at a higher level, just because some of those first level spells, sometimes some of the second level spells and so on, are incredibly useful to have. And I would use them more than higher level spells, so I wouldn't bother with those spells prepared. I wouldn't bother with preparing those higher level spells necessarily. But I do think they're trying to also consolidate some information here. This is probably an easy way to do it. Generally, I'm in favor of more flexibility, but I would honestly have to try this out to see what I fully think about this particular change to spellcasting. Spellcasting focus. You can use a musical instrument as a spellcasting focus for spells you prepare for this class. Ahoy! How's it going? Good to see you. I know D&D isn't really your thing, but good to see you in the chat. Always good stuff. All right, second level, expertise. Expertise being a thing bards already got, a thing that rogues already got, but that is the whole point of these expert classes, I guess. So you gain expertise in 2 of your skill proficiencies of your choice. Performance and persuasion are iconic choices for a bard if you have proficiency in them. All right, and it doesn't go into anything else, presumably because you can look up expertise as a keyword and figure out exactly what expertise does. I think that's a good way to do it. The more you can use an appendix to break down specific terms, the better, I think. I think that's something where Pathfinder 2nd Edition has really done really well compared to stock 5th edition. With stock 5th edition, you have to look into individual spells, certain class features, various conditions, which do have their own section usually. Various items. You have to look in a variety of places to find the right information. Whereas here, they can keep these listings brief and refer to a keyword. And I think that's the best way to do it. Second level, Songs of Restoration. You have learned how to use music, poetry. Hey, those healing spells that I love so much. For bards, they're right there. You have learned how to use music, poetry, and dance to heal wounds and maladies. When you reach certain levels in this class, you add a specific spell to your Songs of Restoration repertoire, as shown in the Songs of Restoration repertoire table. You always have that spell prepared, and it doesn't count against the number of spells you can prepare. So right out the gate at second level, they get Healing Word, the, go-to kind of emergency healing spell. Very flexible, very capable in its ways. We'll see if that healing word has changed at all. I think it probably could do with some dampening, but even if it doesn't change, I'm just happy to see some healing spells added to the bard, despite their spell list probably not including them. Alright, 3rd level Bard subclass. You gain the College of Lore subclass or another Bard subclass of your choice. The College of Lore is detailed in the Bard's class description, and other subclasses will appear in future Unearthed Arcana articles. So right now they're just giving us a single subclass, probably the kind of the iconic choice for each class in these playtest materials, to start at least. Subclass is a specialization that grants you the special abilities at certain bard levels. For the rest of your career, you gain each of your subclasses features that are of your bard level and lower. This class's description tells you the levels when your subclass provides features. 4th level feats. You gain an ability score improvement feat or another feat of your choice. Yeah, that is interesting wording. I'm curious to see what that specifically refers to. 5th level, Jack of all trades. You can add half your proficiency bonus, rounded down, to any ability check you make that uses a skill proficiency you lack that doesn't otherwise use a proficiency bonus. Now, I think it makes sense that they would include round down here. The general rule is round down unless otherwise noted. I feel like that should be a rule that is included somewhere that you can refer to. That would keep these feats trimmed down a little bit further, because if it's the general rule, you shouldn't need to include it in the feat breakdown. But you can add half your proficiency bonus to any ability check that you make that uses a skill proficiency you lack and doesn't otherwise use a proficiency bonus. So for non-proficient skills that aren't otherwise boosted by your proficiency for some reason. It's an interesting choice of wording there, because generally you think if you don't have proficiency, it wouldn't use your proficiency bonus. But this also would be affecting if you have, for example, any items that add your proficiency bonus or other features that add your proficiency bonus without giving you proficiency in that skill. Probably a good ruling to make right out the gate. For example, if you make a strength check, athletics, and lack athletics proficiency, you can add half your proficiency bonus to the check. So at level 5, if we go back to the table here, level 5 has a proficiency bonus of 3. Since you're rounding down, your Jack of all trades bonus would be +1 that you can add to any non-proficiency bonus boosted skills. 6th level, subclass feature. 7th level, Font of Bardic Inspiration. You now regain all of your expended uses of Bardic Inspiration when you finish a short rest or a long rest, as opposed to just a long rest. In addition, if a creature rolls your Bardic Inspiration die and gets a 1 after any re-rolls you might have, that use of your Bardic Inspiration isn't expended. So, let's see, at 5th level, they're rolling a d8. So, 1 in 8 chance to keep their inspiration if they get the worst result. If I'm understanding that correctly. Seems pretty brief and to the point, so I would hope I didn't somehow get that confused. 8th level, get a feat again. 9th level, expertise. You gain expertise in 2 of your skill proficiencies of your choice again, so that it is a total of 4 expertise skills at that point. 10th level, a subclass feature. 11th level, Magical Secrets. This is a fun bit of the Bard class. You have collected magical knowledge from a wide spectrum of disciplines. Choose a spell list, Arcane, Divine, or Primal. Whenever you prepare spells for this class, up to 2 of the spells you prepare can be from the chosen list and from any school of magic. The prepared spells otherwise follow the rules of your Bardic spellcasting feature. So you can kind of steal spell options from other spell lists that you wouldn't normally have access to once you get to 11th level, over the halfway point in your adventuring career. 12th level, another feat. 14th level, another subclass feature. 15th level, further magical secrets. Choose a spell list that you didn't choose for your magical secrets feature. So you get to choose another spell list. So if you chose Divine previously, you can choose Arcane or Primal now. And so on, obviously. Whenever you prepare your bard spells, the spells can be from this list and from any school of magic. So you can further increase your range of spells. So I wonder if you get a third magical secrets, you can just pick from any spell ever at a certain point. We'll see. But at 15th level, there's not much further to go, but maybe they'll sneak it in there. Actually, no, at 18th level, 16th level, and 20th level. Yeah, I guess so. You can't get access to every spell, but you can access most spells. Another feat, Superior Bardic Inspiration. When you roll initiative, you regain 2 expended uses of your Bardic Inspiration. This is moving that previously a level 20th feature to level 18th now. 19th level, you get a feat, and at 20th level, you gain an Epic Boon of Luck feat. Oh, no, you gain the Epic Boon of Luck feat or another Epic Boon feat of your choice. So Epic Boons are something that are in Stock 5e, but they're rarely used. One of the suggested uses of them is as a bonus reward for something, or as sort of a reward for leveling up beyond 20. Though you can't level up beyond 20, a suggested use, I believe, is basically when you would level up, if your campaign is still going that long, instead of giving them further class levels, you can give them epic boons. And because of this, they're not really used. They're tucked away in the DMG, not really ever referred to outside of that, so people don't really think about them. But this lets you have epic boons of your choice once you reach level 20. That's, I think, a cool way to include these, good way to bring them into the game. And because previously the level 20th features are being moved to level 18, could make multiclassing a little bit more enticing if you wanted to do something that was just a small dip, a couple of levels in one class, but you wanted to still primarily get this main class. Say you wanted to get up to level 18 to get the Superior Bardic Inspiration, you could still take 2 levels. You would be foregoing a feat and an epic boon, but it's an option to make multiclassing more enticing, since you don't have to give up on that class-based capstone, which is now at level 18. Now we have the prepared bard spells in the PHP for Stock 5e. This is where your class spell list would go, but instead your spell lists are being more generalized to the Arcane, Divine, and Primal. So now you just get to see what their recommended spells are for a quick build type usage. So if you're making a character and you want to get through it quickly, you don't want to have to think about what spells you're taking, you just take the spells they suggest here, and you're good to go. So not really going to go through those. Really no reason to. Hold on. Nope, never mind. I see. I was confused. I saw it go beyond 9th, and I was confused because spells typically go to 9th level. This is class level, so that makes a little bit more sense. Bard subclasses. So we're going to get a look at the College of Lore subclass here now. Bards of the College of Lore know something about most things. So kind of like at the start of the core class itself, little breakdown on the identity, the class identity of the College of Lore here. Again, if anyone is aware that there's any important information within these couple of paragraphs, let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to just kind of skip over to the subclass features themselves. So starting at 3rd level, bonus proficiencies, you gain 3 skill proficiencies, Arcana, History, and Nature. If you already have one of these proficiencies, choose a skill proficiency you lack and gain that proficiency. So right out the gate, it gives you some intelligence-based skills that you get for free just for choosing this subclass. But if you already have one of those, you can choose another skill proficiency at will. Third level, cutting words, a classic, very well-known feature among people who are familiar with bards. The College of Lore is pretty frequently picked because of this feature, I believe. At least in stock 5e. You learn how to use your wit to supernaturally distract, confuse, and otherwise sap the confidence and competence of others. When a creature that you can see within 60 feet of yourself succeeds an ability check or an attack roll, you can use your reaction to expend one of your uses of Bardic Inspiration, rolling a Bardic Inspiration die, and subtracting the number rolled from the creature's roll, potentially turning it into a failure. Is a very potent thing, can help you stop yourself or allies from being struck, can stop enemies from succeeding on things that they would otherwise succeed on, and you get to use it when you know they've already succeeded, so that you know that you're not wasting your inspiration in making this reaction. Basically expands your use of Bardic Inspiration to counteracting enemies. Not necessarily enemies, it can be literally anyone, but usually you're going to use this against your enemies. 6th level, Cunning Inspiration. Through your studies and your cunning, you've learned to inspire others exceptionally well. When any creature rolls your Bardic Inspiration die, that creature can roll the die twice and use the higher of the 2 rolls. That is pretty significant. Making sure you get a higher chance of getting a good bonus to those inspiration rolls. 10th level, Improved Cutting Words. Whenever you use your Cutting Words feature on a creature, you can deal psychic damage to that creature equal to the number rolled on the Bardic Inspiration die plus your Charisma modifier. So that's like a full normal like weapon attack worth of damage. Because I think a rapier is like I mean your Bardic Inspiration can be a variety of dice, but compared to a rapier, that's a d8 plus dexterity. This is, you know, at least a d6 plus your charisma. At 10th level, actually, it's more than a d6, but you get the point. It's a d10, even better. D10 plus your charisma, up to a d12 plus your charisma if you get higher levels, just for using Cutting Words. So you make someone possibly fail what they're doing and also hurt them. That's fun. That's really potent capabilities that these guys have, and that, I believe, is a completely new feature. That is something that I don't think was ever included in Cutting Words before. Cunning Inspiration, I think, is also new. Previously, lore bards got an additional magic secrets feature, which isn't included in this version, it looks like. But Peerless Skill is one that they already had. So when you make an ability check and fail, you can expend one use of Bardic Inspiration, roll the Bardic Inspiration die, and add the number rolled to the ability check, potentially turning it into a success. If the check still fails, the Bardic Inspiration isn't expended. So this lets you use your Bardic Inspiration for yourself now. Normally you can only use it to help or hinder others, but now you can use it on yourself, which is pretty nice. Now, it is specifically referring to boosting your ability checks. You can't specifically hinder your own checks. But if ever I was running a game for a bard and they wanted to use their Cutting Words on themselves once they have Peerless Skill, I think I would let them. And I only bring that up because I know there's certain situations where players will make a check and for story reasons or whatever the case might be, they don't want to succeed, but they still want to make the check. You know, the check was called for, so they're gonna make it, but they don't necessarily want to succeed. And if someone wanted to play it that way, I would absolutely be on board with that. The Bard looks good to me so far. I am wary of the changes to spellcasting, and I think that's something that's going to be uniform across all spellcasters, probably, with certain exceptions to spellcasters who already worked differently, like warlocks, might not work the same way as this. But for all I know, they could as well. Who knows? We'll obviously see more of that when we get into the priest and mage groups of classes. But with the bard, at least, I'm wary of the spellcasting. But otherwise, it looks good to me. This subclass looks incredibly potent. It was already a powerful subclass, the College of Lore. But I'm curious to see if this gets reduced in any way, if this gets nerfed at all before publishing. It's still a long ways off, but I'm curious about that. Alternatively, I wonder if maybe this is kind of the power level they're going for everyone. In which case, if everyone was ideally made to try to be on this level, that would be pretty powerful feeling. But from the bard, we move on to the ranger, who I think is maybe going to see the most changes out of everyone, because they were a heavily criticized class from the beginning, as far as I can tell. I saw that there were some threads online talking about the ranger specifically, but I didn't go into them because I wanted to see it firsthand for myself before I started getting into the discussion. So, a little bit of that lore. I feel like the bard got like half a page, didn't they? Why does the ranger only get a few paragraphs? Yeah, let's look into this. We'll start with their, kind of skip over some things. Obviously, we already read kind of the creating a bard. Creating a ranger is probably going to be pretty similar. Ranger's given the same D10 hit die. Strength and dexterity saving throws are the same. 3 skills, which seems to be the same. Animal handling, athletics, insight, investigation, nature, perception, stealth, and survival. All the same list. No real reason to expect that they would change this, but maybe they would see fit to add or remove some when taking this opportunity to kind of peruse things. Their suggested ones being athletics, stealth, and survival, which seems fitting. Rangers are the ones I would expect to have that kind of arrangement. They're hunters, so stealth and survival make a lot of sense, and they're out in the wilds. They're the wilds are their domain, so athletics also makes sense. You're going to be pretty acrobatic. Ranger has 2 primary abilities and the bard has only 1. I will have to see that part. That's interesting. So as with stock 5e, the ranger is only up to 5th level spellcasting, but they start with spells immediately instead of waiting a level to have their magic turn on. So they basically get an extra tier where they get 2 first level spells, and they get cantrips, which they never had previously, I don't think. Looking at the table for Rangers on D&D Beyond, they don't seem to have cantrips. And I think similar to Paladins in Stock 5e, they don't. So, right at the beginning, they get expertise at level 1. I would bet Rogues probably also get expertise at level 1. Rangers previously never had it, so that's cool to see expertise in their table. Looks like they get it at 9th level as well, so probably a total of 4, but maybe their expertise works slightly differently. We'll see. Favorite enemy, they're keeping that feature, possibly changing it, and they are removing the Natural Explorer feature, and moving spellcasting down to 1st level as opposed to 2nd level. Let's see here. They still get their extra attack, which is nice. They have nothing going on at 17th level. But they had a few sections like that in stock 5e. They get more. I don't think they necessarily get more stuff. I think their stuff is just spread out more. Normally, you would have a few levels like 10th level where you would get 2 features. Wasn't a subclass level previously. But I think those features have been split up and mixed amongst where you get usually looks like one thing every level, with the exception of 17th. Oh, and we missed a little bit of their starting stuff because of the way that they've formatted this. Unfortunately, they had to split this stuff, which is unfortunate formatting, but with this big of a table, there's only so much you can do. Simple weapons, martial weapons, no tools, same as usual. Light armor, medium armor, and shields, same as stock 5e. So, all that seems to be the same. Again, I love how they've been breaking down the equipment as opposed to being a written out, comma separated list, like a sentence. It's actually broken up like a table almost. Much more easy at a glance to see what stuff you get. Fantastic work there. 150 starting gold for the ranger as opposed to 100 for the bard. I would have thought the bard would be the wealthier of the classes, but maybe this has to do with how much money it costs to get generally the more expensive gear that a ranger would need. Because a bard isn't going to have 3 different weapons, not going to have a quiver, doesn't need to buy ammunition, doesn't have expensive armor. This armor's not that expensive. Interesting that they start you with studded leather. You don't start with the bottom of the barrel equipment, apparently. Multi-classing the ranger. Ability score minimum. Proficiencies gained. You gain martial weapons and 1 skill of your choice from the ranger's skill list. That's neat. You can use rangers as an option to get martial weapons if you're to multi-class into them. And then you also get all of their armor proficiencies as well. Since they have armor training highlighted here, I wonder if they're going to have armor training be something that's more of a thing as opposed to just armor proficiencies like they do with the weapons and tools and stuff. Actually, I wonder if that's specifically separated out to have to do with the idea of training that would be used for skills and tools and such. Maybe tools, weapons, and skills can all be trained normally and armor can't? Who knows? I'm eager to see. In stock 5e, I believe you can train skills, and I believe you can train tools, but by default, I don't think you can train weapons or armor. It would be interesting to see them expand upon training to gain more stuff for your character with One D&D. Spell slots, because the ranger is a spellcaster. Similar to the bard, you get some stuff there based on multi-classing spell casting. And then we move into expertise. They still get 2 expertise in their skills, just like the bard does. So their later expertise is probably also 2. I wasn't sure if they were going to make, I think the bard gets expertise in stock 5e at level 1, and then they get it again once or twice as they level up. Bard gets it partway into their leveling, and they I think they get it less than the rogue does in stock 5e. I could be getting that mixed up, but I was curious to see if they're going to follow that trend or if they're going to be more uniform with how they give out expertise here on these expert classes. It looks like they're being pretty uniform with it. The levels that you get it at might not be the same, but so far they both have 2, and they seem to get 2 skills in expertise each time. Favorite enemy. You are adept at focusing your ire on a single foe. You always have the Hunter's Mark spell prepared, and it doesn't count against the number of spells you can prepare. Moreover, you don't have to concentrate on the spell once you cast it. It lasts for its full duration until you end it as a bonus action, or until you are incapacitated. Previously, with stock 5e, the favorite enemy was one of the points of contention within the community. You would pick certain types of enemies, and that would be your favorite enemy, and you would get bonuses when interacting with those enemies. Here, you get a nice, versatile Hunter's Mark, which is a fantastic way to do it. And then we go into spellcasting. Their initial spells prepared. I do wonder why they list this here if they have that section at the end of the class as well, though. But yeah, otherwise, 2 cantrips, 2 first level. Primal spell list can be any school of magic except evocation, so they can't be thrown around fireballs and things like that, but they aren't otherwise limited by magic schools, whereas the bard is much more limited. They only get certain spells, schools that they can pick from, though I think they have over half of the total schools in their options, but still. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can place a spell you have prepared with another primal spell, the same level that isn't an evocation. Higher levels, you can prepare more spells. Consult the prepared range spells for recommendations. Spellcasting ability is Wisdom. So I wonder... Let's see. Let me scroll back up here and check something. Yeah, so I guess their primary abilities are Dexterity and Wisdom. Wisdom for the spells, and Dexterity for the weapons. Whereas the Bard, they are a full caster, so the majority of what they do is going to be spellcasting based. So them only having one primary ability makes sense, compared to something like this, which kind of has 2 primary abilities, depending on how you're going to go, like where you're going to focus between weapons and magic. And for spellcasting focus, they can use a druidic focus as a spellcasting focus for the spells they prepare for this class. Again, kind of tying them to that primal magic, obviously through their spell list being primal as well, but they're also directly related to the druidic focus for spellcasting. Which I wonder if maybe they will change that name to just a primal focus, because I feel like that would make more sense at this point. Then they could do Arcane, they could do Primal, and they could do Divine, as opposed to Arcane Focus, Druidic Focus, and Holy Symbol. I think calling them a Druidic Primal Focus, Arcane Focus, and Divine Focus would make more sense. And then obviously whatever the specifics of those items are is up to the player. Second level, fighting style. Something that Rangers already had was fighting styles. They can choose archery, defense, or 2-weapon fighting. That's Interesting. They lose the dueling that they currently have on D&D Beyond, but dueling might have come later. I don't remember. At least to Rangers. I know with a certain book that came out, they increased what fighting styles every class had access to, and they included those in the class pages of D&D Beyond, I believe. So dueling might have come to Rangers with that change. This might be more true to the PHB release. Oh yeah, notice that's a fighting style feat now, and just a style. It is a low level feat. Fighting style feats. I think that's good. I think using the wording for feat for everything that effectively functions like a feat makes sense. They still use the full word feature for class things and subclass things, but I know with, like, again, comparing it to Pathfinder 2nd Edition, everything is worded as feats pretty much. So you have your heritage feats or your ancestry feats, you have your class feats, you have general feats and skill feats and all that. I think leaning into that will make things, kind of consolidating things, is probably for the best. Again, because having the information where you need it in one place makes sense, similar to having the multi-classing stuff with the class information as opposed to in a separate area. I think is for the best. Here, I think having your fighting style feats with all of your other feats makes sense. It also means that they don't have to break down what each of these fighting styles is right here. So it's kept down to 2 paragraphs instead of like 5. So I think it's good for formatting, good for readability. Whenever you gain a feat at later levels, fighting style feats are among your options, even though you aren't a member of the warrior group. That's interesting. So Rangers are still kind of dipping into the warrior group slightly through fighting style feats. And whenever they gain feats, they can pick fighting style feats. This suggests that warriors can take fighting styles whenever they take a feat normally, which is cool. That means that you don't have only like 1 or 2 times where you can choose them. You can have them anytime you would gain a feat. 3rd level, Ranger subclass. Gain the Hunter subclass. Again. Hunter. Hunter is an interesting choice. I would have been more interesting to see them start with Beastmaster, because I feel like that feels like the iconic Ranger to me for D&D. But I guess Hunter, with the idea of, being a wildland stalker who can take down anything, kind of the almost like a Monster Hunter or Witcher type subclass, does make sense still. Let's see. 4th level, they get a feat. 5th level, they get an extra attack, so they can attack twice. Then 6th level, subclass feature. 7th level, roving. Speed increased by 10 feet while you aren't wearing heavy armor. You also have a climb speed and a swim speed equal to your speed. That's cool. I like that a lot. That is a very enticing class feature to me. I always like speed increases because it feels good to zoom around the battlefield, and getting extra movement speeds fit the class identity. Again, you're a wildlands person, so whether you're in the forests or mountains or wherever you might need to climb, and wherever you might need to swim in the ocean or lakes or rivers, ponds, whatever the case might be, you are ready for it. 8th level, you get a feat. 9th level, you get an expertise. Again, 2 skills of your choice. So you get the total of 4, just like the Bard. The subclass. 11th level, you get Tireless. Primal Forces now help fuel you on your journeys, granting you the following benefits. Let me go back on D&D Beyond to my Ranger class features. I want to see if Tireless is something that they have. Doesn't appear that it is. So, I'm pretty sure Roving wasn't either, which is why that feature struck me so much. Yeah. Temporary hit points. Whenever you finish a short rest or a long rest, you can give yourself a number of temporary hit points equal to 1d8 plus your proficiency bonus. So just for taking a rest, they get a boost in their HP through temporary hit points. That is big. And decrease exhaustion. If you're exhausted when you finish a short rest, your level of exhaustion decreases by 1. Most characters need to take a long rest to reduce exhaustion by 1. Which again, if you're getting exhaustion a lot in your games, that would be huge for the Ranger characters. 12th level, that's a feat. 13th level, Nature's Veil. I wonder if this is possibly related to the hide in plain sight or vanish features. Let's see. You invoke spirits of nature to magically hide yourself from view. As a bonus action, you can expend a spell slot and become invisible until the end of your turn. All right, so it's kind of playing on the same idea of hide in plain sight and vanish a little bit. Vanish was a higher level feature that would let you hide as a bonus action, so you can see that with the bonus action use and the fact that it's hiding, turning invisible. It also stopped you being tracked by magical means unless you choose to leave a trail, which isn't included here. You're still going to be leaving tracks even though you're invisible. Hide in plain sight, you could spend a minute creating camouflage, and once you're camouflaged, you can hide by pressing up against solid surface like a tree or a wall to get a +10 bonus to stealth checks as long as you remain without moving. So this is around those same levels and kind of playing on the same idea of being sneaky, but I think it's done in a much more useful way. Hide in plain sight, like that's a kind of one-off ability. You camouflage yourself, you press up against a wall. If you move at all, you lose that bonus. So it's only good if you're hiding from a patrol moving through or something. And Vanish is a lot more useful in combat because you can hide as a bonus action. And it stops you from being tracked, but you are still visible. Whereas this, you turn invisible, bonus action, spell slot use. I do like the idea of not being able to be tracked by non-magical means with Vanish, but I think as a whole, this is a pretty good take on those style of features. 14th level, we have another subclass feature. 15th, Feral Senses. Connection to the forces of nature grants you blind sight with a range of 30 feet. So anyone who's hiding, anyone who's invisible, otherwise out of sight, behind corners, things like that. And since it's a highlighted term here, they must go into the specifics of what that means later. But in general, 30 feet of blind sight sounds pretty good. Previously, they did an 18th level feature called Feral Senses that made it to where things being hidden from you weren't as much of a problem, and you could more easily track invisible things and stuff like that. This is a more general, more useful, and much more succinct way of covering that feature. In addition to it being bumped down to level 15 instead of 18 is pretty nice. I think that part of that is that they moved the level 20 features down to level 18, so they kind of had to push everything a little bit. probably. 16th level, you get a feat. 18th level, you get Foe Slayer, your previous level 20 feature. Hunter's Mark now deals an extra 1d10 damage to its target rather than an extra 1d6, so almost double the damage output of your Hunter's Mark bonus. Previously, you would, in stock 5e, that is to say, once on each of your turns, you could add your Wisdom modifier to the attack roll or damage roll of an attack you make against one of your favorite enemies. So, still ties into your favorite foe through the use of Hunter's Mark. Just boosts up the damage by changing the die, as opposed to adding an ability score modifier bonus to the damage. The only main difference here I'm seeing is that you lose out on the ability to boost the attack roll. Now it's just the damage roll gets boosted. And again, they worded the previous version to where you could do it before or after the roll, but before any effects are applied to the roll. So it was one of those situations where, like, you could roll the dice, but if the DM told you the result of the roll, then you can't use the feature anymore. Kind of ties into that whole situation, which is, you know, it feels bad if you want to use a feature, but maybe the DM is a little bit quick on the draw and tells you, oh, that hits, that doesn't hit, whatever the case might be. Being able to know that you're not wasting your feature is always going to be a huge boon. Then level 19 of feats, just like the Bard, and level 20 Epic Boon. They suggest the Epic Boon of Fortitude feat. Also, with that feat wording, they're doing it on the Epic Boons as well, which suggests the Epic Boons will be listed amongst the other feats, like fighting styles and such as well. And if they don't include everything with the name, with the word feat in its name, in a section of the book that is all about the feats, it's a huge failing on their part in my mind. This Ranger looks good. I think this would be fun to play. I would absolutely love to give this a try. I think they did a good job at refining what they previously had for the stock PHB Ranger. And I mean, the fact that they can fit most of the class feats on a single page because they have keywords, like expertise is a keyword that you can review the full details of in a later part, referring to specific spells, referring to things like blind sight and invisible conditions, and senses and stuff like that. You know, only a few parts require a lot of wording, and that's because honestly, they could break down spellcasting and have the general spellcasting rules if it works the same for most classes, which so far seems to be the case. The only ones that should have extra wording are the ones that specifically work differently. But the fact that I was able to go through and not have to read through a bunch of this because I just read it on the Bard section suggests that maybe you don't need all of this, right? Then, of course, we have the prepared spells suggestions and the Hunter subclass. So let's get to that. Yeah, basically to kind of finish what I was saying, you know, like this paragraph is a good example of being an exception, of having an extra paragraph because this is the one that's different, right? I think if they cut down spellcasting, almost everything for the Ranger would be on one page. And I think that would be a huge boon to feeling much more approachable as a new player. As it is, this is already pretty good. It's already cut down quite a lot, I think, from what you would normally have in the stock 5e PHP. All right, though, we're getting into the Hunter 3rd level, Hunter's Prey. Again, little paragraph of lore there, but we're skipping that. Your tenacity can wear down even the most resilient foes. When you hit a creature with a weapon or an unarmed strike as part of the attack action on your turn, the weapon or unarmed strike deals an extra 1d8 damage to the target if it's missing any of its hit points. You can deal this extra damage only once per turn. So Hunter's Prey previously gave you a list of options, which I'm always for options, but options isn't ultimately the name of the game for D&D 5e, it seems. And even without different subclass, different feature options and stuff like that, you can still make a very interesting and unique feeling character regardless, so it's not the worst case. But it seems like this feature is based on the Colossus Slayer part of the Hunter's Prey. Seems to work almost entirely the same. So you lose out on the Horde Breaker and Giant Killer, though maybe those are something. It doesn't look like it, really. There's not really much else going on here. So yeah, I guess you kind of miss out on those other options. 6th level, you get Hunter's Lore. You can call on the forces of nature to reveal certain strengths and weaknesses of your prey. While a creature is marked by your Hunter's Mark, you know whether that creature has any immunities, resistances, and vulnerabilities, and if the creature has any, you know what they are. So that's cool. It gives you a breakdown on information of the creature that is, again, leaning into this kind of monster hunter type character that the hunter is based on. Previously in this place, you would have defensive tactics, which make it a little bit harder to hit you and stuff like that, you know, makes you more defensive. As the name suggests here, it's leaning into the class identity a little bit better, I think. Multi-attack, the same feature you would have in stock 5e again. Now you always have Conjure Barrage prepared, and it doesn't count against the number of spells you can prepare. You can also cast the spell with 1st and 2nd level spell slots. When you do so, the spell's damage is reduced by 1d8 for each spell slot level below 3rd. So normally spellcasters can upcast spells. This hunter can downcast a very specific spell, which is an interesting take and something that I've seen people want to do with spells previously. Since they include the information here, I would imagine you can't normally downcast spells. So this is a very unique feature to this specific thing. Previously for multi-attack, they had the options of Whirlwind Attack if you were doing melee attacks. So you could make a melee attack with a single action against anything within 5 feet of you. Or you could do Volley if you're using a ranged attack to make an attack against every creature within 10 feet of a point you can see within your weapon's range. Here you just get to lean on a specific spell, keeps it nice and consolidated, keeps the breakdown very brief. You know, it would be 1 paragraph if not for this very interesting and unique bonus quirk to the feature. And finally, you have Superior Hunter's Defense. When you're hit by an attack roll, you can use your reaction to halve the attack's damage against yourself, and you can redirect the other half of the damage to one creature other than your attacker that you could see within 5 feet of yourself. Let's see here. So previously, this feature gave 3 options: Evasion, Stand Against the Tide, and Uncanny Dodge. This is kind of playing into the identity of Evasion or Uncanny Dodge. Not Evasion. Evasion was specifically saving throws, so they threw that part out entirely. They took the fact that you can use your action to half the damage from Uncanny Dodge, as well as the fact that you can cause part of that damage to go against another target. The stand against the tide from the stock 5e hunter would let you redirect a full attack to another creature of your choice from the attacker. So this is kind of combining those two features to some degree into one single thing. Overall, I think it sounds good. The interesting thing is this subclass, each of the 4 features gave you 2 or 3 options. They were all 3 except for multi-attack, which only had 2, one for ranged, one for melee. But they took out the options for these features to specific single effects. But the effects that they gave you all sound pretty good. And you can see where they got them if you look at the previous designs. Honestly, I think it's fine. Again, I'm always in favor of more options, but I think at this point, if I want to have a lot of options in my character evolution, I will go to a system like Pathfinder 2nd Edition, which is built on a lot of options. Slightly more complex than 5e and 1D&D especially is shaping up to be, but gives you those options. If you want simple, easy to jump into, easy to learn, incredibly approachable, this is kind of what you're going for. So it's looking good to me so far. And I'm actually really interested in trying out playing a ranger with the 1D&D style. I would love to try that out at some point. And finally, we move on to the rogue. I say finally, but you can see how far into the thing we are here. There's still sections beyond the classes that we will have to look into. But as far as the main content is the classes. So we are on the last of the 3 expert classes. That is the rogue. Again, they get some kind of identity building writing here right up front. I think the rogue got more than the ranger did. I think the bard got more than the ranger did. Feels bad to be a ranger, I guess. But ultimately, this is stuff that most people will skip over anyway. It is good for people who are learning the game, trying to figure out what the class identity of the different classes is, though. So, create a rogue, consider the following list, blah, blah, blah. We've already seen all this. It doesn't look like there's really anything different here. Let's scroll down first to look at this stuff, and then we'll check out the table after. Still a D8. Obviously, I wouldn't expect them to change most of this stuff, but you never know. Light armor, simple weapons, martial weapons that have the finesse property. Previously, they had a selection of specific martial weapons, similar to the bards, but now they have a more general wording. So anything that is martial and has the finesse property is proficient by rogues. You have thieves' tools, as you would expect. Dexterity and intelligence for saving throws, and skills. Choose 4 from acrobatics, athletics, deception, insight, intimidation, investigation, perception, persuasion, sleight of hand, and stealth. The same list, same number. So you still get to be kind of that skill junkie with 4 skills. While most classes, at least in stock 5e, get 2. I think it was bards that got 3. The ranger might have also gotten 3, which would make sense if the identity is these guys are all the experts. Skills are important for that. Moving up here to check out the table, you've got no spellcasting on the rogues, as you would expect. Get the class features. Pretty similar breakdown, it looks like, to what you would have on the stock 5e. Actually, here's a bit of a change. They're kind of switching some things around here, but otherwise it's pretty similar. And then at the higher levels here, you get some things that look unfamiliar to me, but they might be based on previously established features. We'll see. Your sneak attack progression looks about the same. You go from 2d6 up to 1d6 up to 10d6, being kind of the bulk of where your damage as a rogue comes from. Then, of course, you have proficiency bonus and level. Same for everyone. As it should be. If they ever changed it to make the proficiency bonus scaling different for a class, that would be absurd and problematic. And I'm glad that even from the beginning, they had a static table for everyone. But we're moving into the features, starting with expertise at first level, exactly as it worked for the others. You get 2 skills, and they have their suggestions. One thing I want to look at here real quick, I didn't check for. 1 expertise, 2 expertise. No 3rd expertise. So it looks like each of the expert classes gets 2 expertise, which equates to a total of 4 skills. First level, sneak attack. You know how to turn a subtle attack into a deadly one. Once on each of your turns, when you take the attack action, you can deal extra damage to one creature you hit with an attack roll if you're attacking with a finesse weapon or a ranged weapon, and if at least one of the following requirements is met. You have advantage on the attack. At least one of your allies is within 5 feet of the target, the ally isn't incapacitated, and you don't have disadvantage on the attack roll. That is the same as it always was. I'm pretty sure. Still restricted to finesse or ranged weapons. Same requirements here. And extra damage, roll number of d6 is equal to half your rogue level, round up. They really don't need to do that, and they could just refer you to the table. It is technically what they say here, but including a part where you round up specifically is the problem I have with this. I feel like if they didn't say round down everywhere else, it would be clear that this is the exception, but the fact that they say round down in some places and round up in other places is clearly a problem. You can only do sneak attack only once per turn. Before raw, you could get sneak attack on your turn and your action. The important wording is if it's once per turn or once per round. Because before you could get it on your reactions, or if there was anything else that would let you make an attack not on your turn, because it was once per turn. So that included your turn, each of your allies' turn, and each of your enemies' turns. Let me see. Once on each of your turns. They specifically call it out on being on your turns, which is the important thing here. But yeah, I have problems with the fact that they're including round up and round down, especially when in previous situations like this, they would refer to the table. They would say, to determine the extra damage, see the appropriate table on your class, the appropriate section of your class table. Here, they tell you the math to figure it out, which is unnecessary. And in doing so, they kind of propagate the fact that they say round up, round down. Again, if they didn't say round down on the majority of features, because the standard rule is round down unless stated otherwise, saying round up here wouldn't be an issue. And that would be a way that they could resolve it. They could also resolve it by just referring to the table. Refer to the table, D&D. Come on. Add the dice together. The damage type is the same as the weapon's damage type. Yeah, so the only real change here, which I kind of missed at a glance, but Dark Tower pointed out, is the fact that you can only do this on your turn. You can't. You can no longer sneak attack on reactions or anything else that would allow you to make an attack when it's not your turn. Moving on to Thieves' Cant. You picked up various languages in the communities where you plied your roguish talents. You know Thieves' Cant and one other language of your choice. So you get an extra bonus language that you didn't normally get from Thieves' Cant, but you also know Thieves' Cant, and it seems like, and I mentioned this before, in the initial play test material for Origins, it seems like they're throwing Thieves' Cant and Druidic and stuff into the languages, when previously they made a point that they are not counted as languages. But here, you know Thieves' Cant and one other language of your choice, suggesting that Thieves' Cant is considered a language, which means that if you can learn other languages, you could probably also learn Thieves' Cant. You could probably also learn Druidic. Whatever the case might be, was previously not on the table. The only way to learn them, because they weren't considered languages, they were specifically a thing given from the class feature, now appears to be a language. I don't know why they felt the need to restrict them previously. I guess they wanted rogues and criminals and druids to feel special, because they had a secret language, which is kind of part of the identity, right? Especially for rogues with Thieves' Cant. But I feel like the restriction was unnecessary, and most people just treated them like they were languages already anyway. So you might as well officially just treat them like languages. Cunning action. Your quick thinking and agility allows you to move and act quickly. On your turn, you can take one of the following actions as a bonus action: dash, disengage, or hide. That is exactly the same as it was in stock 5e. Not something that ever needs to be changed, I don't think. I think it works perfectly fine as is. So it is exactly that. Rogue subclass. Thief. Obviously, the iconic subclass would be Thief or Assassin. I think in stock 5e, the Assassin is probably the more played one, but I like that Thief was the iconic one that they chose here to start with, because I feel like that is where your mind goes when you think of a rogue, is a thief. Let's see. 4th level feats. 5th level Uncanny Dodge. When an attacker that you can see hits you with an attack roll, you can use your reaction to have the attack's damage against you round down. So maybe with One D&D they're throwing round down on everywhere because no one seems to be familiar with the fact that round down is the general ruling. And maybe I'm the one who's getting mixed up. Maybe it's not considered the general ruling. Maybe it is, and it's just kind of hidden knowledge. I think it's included somewhere in the books, though. In the original, either the player's handbook or the DM's guide. But looking at this now, looking at Uncanny Dodge compare this, they didn't have the round down wording. So I guess maybe they're trying to just get out ahead and stop people from repeatedly asking if you round up or down by just including it in the feature. But it is a small addition to the text. It doesn't really expand it that much, but I do think anything you can do to cut down the text is for the best. But I'm starting to understand, I think, why they're doing this. Hopefully, however, I will just say that they don't change and start making more things round up, because if you have a general rule, it's so much easier to go by. Subclass feature. Expertise, 2 of your choice, as before. Feats and evasion at 9th level instead of 7th level. But again, things are moving around on these class tables with One D&D, so that's no surprise. You can nimbly dodge out of the way of certain dangers. When you are subjected to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity saving throw, you take only half damage. You instead take... Oh, I was reading that with a weird cadence. When you are subjected to an effect that allows you to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, you instead take no damage if you succeed the saving throw, and only half damage if you fail. You can't use this feature if you're incapacitated. So, it works very similar to the previous version. The previous version had a little bit of wording that included examples of effects that would cause these saving throws, which I don't think were necessary to include at all. But otherwise, it seems to work pretty much the same. They do throw in the fact that you can't use this if you're incapacitated, which doesn't look like it was included in the original version. It makes sense that you can't really dodge out of the way if you have a condition that makes it to where you can't function properly, such as incapacitated, which I think makes it to where you can't move. So we'll have to see if these conditions are included later in this, or if maybe they were listed in the previous playtest, and I just don't remember. 10th level, feat. 10th level, subclass feature. Interesting that you get a subclass and a feat at the same time. 11th level, reliable talent. You have refined your talents until they approach perfection. Whenever you make an ability check that uses one of your skill or tool proficiencies, you can treat a d20 roll of 9 or lower as a 10. So you now, by default, have a floor to your proficient skills and tools. You can't roll lower than a 10 effectively. So whatever your bonus is will always be 10 plus that or better. Now, it's interesting because if you're treating the d20 roll of 9 or lower as a 10, and this goes for the classic version of the feature as well, that suggests that you would even treat a 1 as a 10, which would suggest that it no longer counts as a critical failure. So I'm curious. I haven't seen a lot of this come up, but I'm curious to see how people do and would continue to rule that in regards to critical failures, especially now that natural ones on skill checks and stuff are automatic failures. In One D&D, this could be an even bigger boon than it was previously. Further going into that, if I were to rule it, I would say just the wording says you treat a roll of 9 or lower as 10. I would say that that would make a natural 1 no longer a natural 1. So I would be on board with giving that benefit to rogues, if even if most people don't agree. 12th level, feats. 13th level, subtle strikes. This is one that they don't seem to have previously. This seems to be new. When you attack, you know how to exploit a target's distraction. You have advantage on any attack roll that targets a creature that is within 5 feet if at least one of... That is within 5 feet of at least one of your allies who is incapacitated. So now not only do you get your sneak attack, but you get advantage on your attack rolls if your target is within 5 feet of your allies. This kind of thing, sneak attack already getting activated by allies being next to your target, in addition to this especially, is part of why I think critical fumbles, where DMs will make you accidentally hit an ally of yours, for rogues is especially punishing, because rogues are the specific class that will target enemies next to allies. Whereas, like, you know, if a fighter in a game with critical fumbles is up close with an enemy and they're the only one there, if they get a critical fumble, maybe that critical fumble will do something against the fighter, probably won't hurt the enemy at all, but at least you're not going to one-hit KO your ally at level 1 because you rolled a natural 1. Obviously, this is 13th level, so this comes online later, so you're not dealing with, you know, the extreme deadly nature of level 1 in this case, but just further reason to be against critical fumbles, especially as a rogue. 14th level subclass feature. 15th level Slippery Mind. That is a returning feature, though possibly changed. Your cunning mind is exceptionally difficult to control. You gain proficiency in wisdom and charisma saving throws. Previously, that was just wisdom saving throws. Now it includes charisma. So that means that the rogue at 15th level gets 4 saving throw proficiencies, whereas most people only get 2. Again, I guess that kind of ties into that expert identity that rogues are sort of the archetype for. 16th level feat. 17th level elusive. You are so evasive that attackers rarely gain the upper hand against you. No attack roll has advantage against you while you aren't incapacitated. So, seems to be exactly the same as the previous version of elusive. A really potent feature if you get to play a rogue up to that level. On 18th level, Stroke of Luck. You have an uncanny knack for succeeding when you need to. If you fail a d20 test, you can turn the roll into a 20. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a short rest or a long rest. So, especially with the way that they've worded d20 tests in One D&D, but obviously normally in stock 5e as well, this will effectively turn whatever you do into a success, because in my mind, if you're being allowed to roll, there is a chance to succeed. Otherwise, there's no reason to roll. That's the way that I run things in stock 5e. That's kind of how things are run by nature in One D&D, because a natural 20, even on ability checks, even if they're not attacks, are considered a success on a natural 20. And this turns it into a 20, which means it's a success, no matter what your modifier is or anything. No matter what the CR or the difficulty class of the test is, this will succeed. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again to finish a short or long rest. Yeah, so it seems like this works exactly the same as the stock version. If I remember correctly, a d20 test includes attack rolls, so it's basically any d20 roll, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, that seems to be the same. Then level 19th, you get a feat. Level 20, you get an epic boon, and they suggest the epic boon of undetectability feat for the rogues. A lot of the rogue is the same. I don't think there was a lot of issues that people had with the rogues in terms of power level or anything. Subtle Strikes, it seems to be new, but it sounds good. It sounds really useful because it just makes you more likely to hit. Possibly even more likely to get a critical hit, which means more likely to really cash in on good damage and everything that rogues are known for occasionally bringing to the fight with their sneak attacks and such. I don't recall if in One D&D sneak attacks will gain bonuses from critical hits. I think there was something about that in the previous playtest material, but I would have to go back and look at that to be sure. That is it for the core class, and that moves us into the thief, the archetype, the kind of iconic subclass for rogues. Starting with fast hands, you have additional options for bonus action of your cunning action, with which you can do the following. Search, take the search action. I'm curious to see what the wording is for that. And sleight of hand, make a dexterity check, sleight of hand, to pick a lock or disarm a trap with thieves tools, or to pickpocket. Previously you could you got the sleight of hand bonus. Now you're getting the search action. For all I know, the search action might be something new, because it doesn't sound like a specific action that I recall from stock 5e. Third level, second story work. You have trained to reach especially hard to reach places. You gain these benefits. Gain a climb speed equal to your speed. Let's see. So the previous version didn't give you a climb speed, but gave you wording that sounded very similar to having a climb speed, which was an interesting choice. Here, I think they kind of decided to simplify it, reduce it down to a very quick and easy ruling by just giving you the climb speed. And jump distance. When you take a jump action, you can make a dexterity check instead of a strength check, which is fantastic. Previously, you would increase your running jump distance by adding your dexterity modifier. I'm curious to see what the jump action entails. Because it sounds like jumping works differently than it previously did. 6th level, Supreme Sneak. Down from 9th level. That's a big shift. You have advantage on every dexterity check stealth you make, provided you aren't wearing medium or heavy armor. Starting at 9th level, let's see. Previous version had advantage on stealth checks if you move no more than half your speed on the same turn. So the previous version had restricting stealth movement speed, using it in combat, stuff like that in mind, I think, when they designed it. Here is a more general usage benefit just by giving you advantage on every stealth check. No more restriction on movement speed. Instead, they have a restriction on the armor you're wearing, which seems fair. Honestly, if you find a rogue in medium or heavy armor, that is a rare case anyway. And at 10th level, use magic device. In your treasure hunting, you've learned how to maximize use of magic items, granting you the following benefits. You can attune to up to 4 magic items at once, up from the 3 magic items that you would have in stock 5e, and presumably One D&D. And whenever you use a magic item property that expends charges, roll a d6. On a roll of 6, you use the property without expending charges. That could be huge. Getting extra uses out of your items that would otherwise be very limited could be really big. And that is... Let's see. These are both new changes to the Use Magic Device feature. Scrolls. You can use any spell scroll that bears a cantrip or a first level spell. You can also try to use any spell scroll that contains a higher level spell, but must first succeed with an intelligence check Arcana with a DC equal to 10 plus the spell's level. On a successful check, you cast the spell from the scroll and you use intelligence as your spellcasting ability for this casting. On a failed check, the scroll disintegrates. So, the stock 5e version of Use Magic Device is that you would ignore all class, race, and level requirements on the use of magic items. You no longer have that, but instead, you can attune to more items, you can try to get more uses out of your items, and you can use any spell scroll, potentially. You have to make a check for it, but you can effectively use any spell scroll. Probably the only class that can use any spell scroll as well, because most are restricted to using spells that are on their spell list. So, interesting to see that there. Finally, Thief's Reflexes. You can now take a second bonus action on your turn, provided it is the bonus action from Cunning Action. You can use this feature on a number of turns equal to your proficiency bonus, and you regain all expended uses when you finish a long rest. Previously, your Thief's Reflexes gave you 2 turns during the first round of combat, and that was it. This gives you more bonus actions. 2 turns is big, but it's once per combat. This is at a bonus action, an extra bonus action every turn, limited by your proficiency bonus, but potentially, every turn in a fight, if you went for 6 rounds at level 20 and that was the entire fight, then, that's everything. Fights usually don't last very many rounds in D&D, so that could be quite a bit of extra bonus actions, and those bonus actions that rogues get are pretty useful in combat. So the only thing I'm curious about is if you use your cunning action, bonus action, can you use your second bonus action to then do another cunning action, bonus action? Or can you only do the bonus action from cunning action once, and the second one you could use to do a offhand attack or something of that nature? Because if you could double up on cunning action, bonus actions, you could do some crazy movement around the battlefield by being able to dash extra times. Rogues already can do that just by having cutting action, but if you could dash 3 times in a turn instead of twice in a turn on top of your new normal movement, so effectively quadrupling your movement speed when most people can only double it, would be crazy. But I would like to see some clarification on that, see what the intention is, because the wording kind of makes it sound like it probably wouldn't be able to double up on cunning action, but I could see enough flexibility in the writing that it could. So we'll see. Hopefully we can get more information there. Maybe we won't know until they publish this and see what they officially publish it as. Who's to say? But moving on, we get to feats. So we're going to kind of go over the feats section here. Description of a feat contains the following parts, which are presented after the feat's name. Level. Each feat has a level. To take a feat, your level must equal or exceed the feat's level. So, just looking over this, at 4th level feat, you would have to be level 4 or higher. Prerequisites. Must meet any prerequisites specified in a feat to take the feat, unless a special feature allows you to take the feat without the prerequisite. If a prerequisite is a class or a class group, you must have at least 1 level in an eligible class to qualify for the feats. Repeatable. If a feat is repeatable, you can take it more than once. If it isn't repeatable, you can take the feat only once. Bonus feats at 20th level. DM can use bonus feats as a form of advancement after characters reach 20th level. A way to provide greater power to characters who have no more levels to gain. With this approach, each character gains 1 feat of their choice for every 30,000 XP the character earns above 355,000. Epic boon feats are especially appropriate for these bonus feats, but a player can choose any feat for which their 20th level character qualifies. So that's kind of expanding on what I mentioned when they first referred to epic boons. That's kind of how they run epic boons in stock 5e, but here, with them being part of feats, they expand to all feats. And here are the feat descriptions. Ability score improvement is a 4th level feat now. So that's interesting because if I recall correctly, everyone gets a free 1st level feat when they make their character. And so this specifically, the level requirements specifically prevent you from choosing certain options, which is probably for the best. Because otherwise, at level 1, with certain feats, you can be absolutely ridiculous. Ability score improvements. Increase your ability score of your choice by 2, or 2 ability scores of your choice by 1. You can't increase an ability score above 20. Just as you would expect an ability score improvement to be if you're familiar with stock 5e. That is how that would work normally. Actor. Charisma 13+, 4th level feat, non-repeatable. Increase your charisma by 1, and while you're disguised as a fictional person or a real person other than yourself, you have advantage on charisma checks. Performance to convince others that you are that person. And you can mimic the sounds of other creatures, including speech. To mimic a sound or a way of speaking, you must listen to it for at least 1 minute. Anytime thereafter, you make a DC 15 charisma check performance to perform the mimicry. On a success, you perform it convincingly for up to 1 hour. So you listen to it for a minute, make your check, and then if you succeed, you can perform it up to an hour. That's neat. Let me pull up feats and just kind of go through and see how drastically different these might seem, if at all, from their stock 5e versions. They kind of broke up the main feature of the previous actor version into these 2 points, impersonation and mimicry. You still had the same prerequisite of listening to it for at least a minute, but that included the impersonation aspects as well, which was more about mimicking the speech of another person as opposed to fully just mastering the disguise, which this is kind of based on. I could see actor being taken more now because of the impersonation being expanded on. Athlete. Strength, Dexterity, or Constitution 13 plus. Non-repeatable. If undergone extensive physical training, gain the following benefits. Increase one of those scores by 1. Strength, Dexterity, or Constitution. Gain a climb speed equal to your speed. That's new. When you're prone, you can right yourself with only 5 feet of movement, which was already in the stock version. And, oh, you know what? The climb speed isn't entirely new, because they did the thing in the stock athlete feat, similar to what the rogue part did, where it says climbing doesn't cost you extra movement, which is more or less basically the same thing as having a climb speed. This just makes much more logic to have it worded this way. And jumping, you have advantage on any ability check you make for the jump action. That must relate to however the jump action works now. I'm curious to see, because it seems like previously you had kind of locked in based on your ability scores how far you could jump. Now it seems like it's probably based on a check. Maybe you'll only jump certain distances depending on how well you roll on that check. I'm curious to see if that's the case. I am excited to see what that change to that action is. Previously it wasn't even considered an action, I don't think. It was just part of your movement that you could do. Charger requires proficiency with a martial weapon. Increase your strength or dexterity by 1. That's a new addition to it. When you take the dash action, your speed increases by 10 feet for that action. That's a nice change, so you can go a bit further with the charger feat. And you have your charged attack. If you move at least 10 feet in a straight line immediately before hitting with an attack as part of the attack action on your turn, choose one of the following effects. Gain a plus 1d8 bonus to the attack's damage roll, or push the target up to 10 feet. Provided the target you want to push is no more than 1 size larger than you, you can use this benefit only once on each of your turns. That works more or less the same. Previously, it was just a plus 5 bonus to the damage, but now it's a d8. Otherwise, seems to work the same. Crossbow expert. This is going to be a big one, potentially. Very common feat to see people take if they're using ranged weapons. Proficiency with any martial weapon. 4th level feats, non-repeatable. Increase your dexterity score by 1, which is new. It seems like they're adding these ability score increases onto a lot more feats. Possibly all the feats at this rate. You ignore the loading property of crossbows, which is more or less the same as the stock version. Firing in melee, being within 5 feet of an enemy doesn't impose disadvantage on your attack rolls with crossbows. Previously, this worked for any ranged attack rolls. Now it's specifically just crossbows because it's crossbow expert. It makes sense. I think it reduces the power of the feat in a way that is appropriate. And dual wielding. When you make an extra attack of the extra attack of the light weapon property, you can add your ability modifier to the damage of the extra attack if that attack is with a crossbow that has the light property. Previously, it would make it to where you could make an attack action with a hand crossbow as a bonus action if you're already using, if you already made an attack with a one-handed weapon. Now seems to suggest that you can already do that. And I'm curious to look at the light weapon property to see how that's expanded on to allow dual wielding. Because if you can dual hand crossbows, I'm all for it. But in the stock 5e rules, you can't do that. Defensive duelist. Dexterity 13 plus prerequisites. That was already established on the defensive duelist previously. 4th level feats. Increases dexterity by 1. Again, the ability score is new. And parry. If you're holding a finesse weapon and another creature hits you with a melee attack, you can use your reaction to add your proficiency bonus to your armor class for that attack, potentially causing an attack to miss you. Let's see. Is there anything else to this? No, there's not. It's just the parry feature. Yeah, that pretty much works the same. This feat is almost entirely the same with the exception of the ability score increase. Honestly, not one that people use very much, but if I wanted to take a feat and I was planning on using finesse weapons, I could absolutely see this being a good one to take if you wanted to avoid getting hit. It's just a nice reactive boon to your AC. Altruistic Lattes rating with a party of 8. Holy cow. Thank you for stopping by. I hope you checked in and realized I was just reading through the PDF and not actually playing D&D when you decided to raid. Absolutely appreciate the raid, though. You guys joining in. I am Azabiel, the Guildmaster of the Guild of Legends, located in the heart of the multiverse. And yeah, right now we're just going through the feats section of the new expert classes One D&D playtest material, seeing how it stacks up to the stock 5e versions that we can find on D&D Beyond. Altruistic Latte actually do D&D discussions, not playthroughs as well. Well, fantastic. I am incredibly glad to see you guys stopping by. It's fantastic. Hey, well, this was the right time for me to be discussing and not playing then, isn't it? I'm absolutely planning to do more of these One D&D playtest material discussions as we go by. Mim111, thank you for your follow. Altruistic Latte as well, thank you for the follow. Yeah, currently we just have the 2 playtest materials. And I did the character origins previously, maybe a week or 2 after that came out. If you're interested in that, you can check out my thoughts on that. I have it uploaded on my YouTube, which you can find a link to. I'm sure in my Twitch, unless I've forgotten to post that there. Definitely on my Twitter, which I know I have linked on my Twitch. So, yeah, right now I'd say, getting close to halfway through the entire document. We're currently looking at the feats and just discussing that, and I'm just getting more and more excited as I read through because there's some clear changes to certain things like the jump action and the search action that I'm very curious about. Poco Dip, thank you for the follow. It's good to have you guys. I've been so interested with this pack and how it'll go. I've been incredibly interested as well. I am in favor of a lot of the changes they've made. Not as much in favor of some things, but relatively small things. So I'm very excited to see how this is shaping up. I was super excited when I saw that they put out this PDF. Yeah, I think we're moving on to dual wielder here. 4th level feat with a proficiency with any martial weapon prerequisite, non-repeatable. Increases your strength or dexterity by 1. Again, I'm really liking this ability score increase that is seemingly on every feat. It makes it more enticing to take feat options as opposed to just ability score increases. Let me pull up dual wielder here, however. Enhanced dual wielding. When you are holding a weapon with the light property in one hand, you can treat a non-light weapon in your other hand as if it had the light property, provided that weapon lacks the two-handed property. So previously, you could use two-weapon fighting while wielding any weapons that don't have light. And now it's restricted a little bit more. Your offhand has to, or your main hand still has to have light, and your offhand can't have two-handed. I don't know how you would do that anyway, but it probably makes sense that they make that restriction just to avoid any crazy shenanigans that people come up with. And then quick draw, you can draw or stow two weapons that lack the two-handed property when you would normally only be able to draw or stow one. Again, it's pretty much the same wording even from the stock version. I do want to see rules, specific rules on two-weapon fighting though, because I want to see if we can finally dual-hand crossbow and be like the demon hunter from Diablo or something. Because I always like that kind of character design, that class identity of running around with two crossbows. So that would be fun if that is available right out of the box at this point. Moving on to durable. 4th level feats, Constitution 13 plus prerequisites, non-repeatable. Increases your Constitution by 1, which durable already did. It's an interesting one of the stock feats that already had an ability score increase. Defy death. You have advantage on death saving throws. That is entirely new to the feature and a huge boon to take if you are getting into dangerous fights a lot. That could be a lifesaver. Speedy recovery. As a bonus action, you can expend one of your hit dice, roll the die, and regain a number of hit points equal to the roll. Previously, when you would, in stock 5e with durable, if you would roll a hit die to regain hit points, you would get a bonus equal to your con modifier. With a minimum of 2, this, let's see, as a bonus action, you can expend one of your hit dice to roll the die and regain a number of hit dice. So you can do kind of an emergency healing on yourself with that. That is a really cool feature. That is something that would have gone really well on a rogue character I was playing recently who would just throw themselves at danger. So it's really cool to see, and I think durable is a much more enticing feat than it previously was. Oh, Elemental Adept has got to be good. I know someone who used this all the time in one of my campaigns to huge benefits. So let's see how it turns out here. 4th level feat. I don't think we've had anything that goes above that yet, so it'll be interesting to see if they have any higher level feats in this document. Requires spellcasting or pact magic feature, so warlocks or any other spellcasters. And it is repeatable, but can only be repeated for different damage types for the energy mastery part of the feat. Has an ability score increase of intelligence, wisdom, or charisma by 1. Again, that's one that the previous version of the feat didn't include. And for the energy mastery, choose one of the following damage types: acid, cold, fire, lightning, or thunder. Same list of damage types. Spells you cast ignore resistance to damage of the chosen type. That works the same, I believe. Yep. In addition, when you roll damage for a spell that you cast that deals damage of that type, you can treat any 1 on a damage die as a 2. Yeah, the wording on the energy mastery is the same, pretty much word for word, for how the previous version worked. So good to see that return. I think it was already a pretty good, very exciting feat as it is. And no reason to really change it. Oh, and now we're getting into epic boons. We're in the E's, so we're getting epic boons. These are things that are going to be very unfamiliar to most people, probably. Because, like I mentioned previously, the epic boons are, unfortunately, largely glossed over in a lot of people's campaigns. But right at the top here, Epic Boon of Combat Prowess, a 20th level feat. I'm guessing all Epic Boons are 20th level. That seems to be the case here, at least. And it makes sense with the idea of what they are. Combat Prowess can only be Expert or Warrior group. It's non-repeatable. And when you miss with a melee attack, you can hit... When you miss with a melee attack, you can hit instead. So you can just choose instead to hit when you use this benefit, when you would normally miss. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you roll initiative. So once per fight, you get to use this, unless you have something else that lets you re-roll your initiative, presumably, in a combat. Yeah, this would only be once per fight. Previously, it was limited to taking short rests, but, you know, that's... The refresh on this is a little strange. I get the idea that they want it to only be once per fight, but, I mean, if you did it once per short rest, it would be... Actually, this is less limited. I'm making sense of it now. You can use this on every fight, whereas previously you would have to take a short rest to use it again. Took me way too long to figure that out. I apologize. But otherwise, seems to work the same. Boon of Dimensional Travel. Expert or Mage group. 20th level feats. Non-repeatable. You can cast the Misty Step spell without expending a spell slot. So a free cast of that spell. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you roll initiative or finish a short rest or a long rest. This is another one, was restricted by short rests, which seems to have been a common trend amongst the epic boons in the stock 5e. Otherwise seems to work the same. This time it just lets you do it, refresh it when you roll initiative, as well as when you take rests. Energy resistance. Okay, so that one either they've changed the name of a previously existing one, or this is a new one. Expert or Mage group. You gain resistance to one of the following damage types of your choice. Acid, cold, fire, lightning, necrotic, poison, psychic, radiant, or thunder. That is most of the damage types. When you finish a short rest or a long rest, you can meditate and change that damage type choice. Okay, so whenever you take a rest, you can switch. So if if you're going on a dragon hunting spree, you can be ready for the cold breath on one dragon, you can be ready for the fire breath on another dragon, lightning on another. Just hope you don't face all those dragons in one fight, otherwise you only get resistance to one of them. That is a cool boon. I like that one. Epic Boon of Fortitude. No prerequisites, 20th level feat, non-repeatable. Your hit point maximum increases by 40. That was the entire wording of the original version. It was just the hit point maximum increase. It was still 40. In addition, whenever you gain hit points, you regain additional hit points equal to your Constitution modifier. So any healing that happens to you, you automatically boost it by your Con modifier. You can regain these additional hit points no more than once per round. Once per round, but so you can't stack a bunch of healing potions from everyone else on your team and full heal just off of that from next to nothing just because of your Con modifier bonus. But it's only limited by a round, so you can in most cases, anytime you get healed, as long as it's not more than once per round, you will get this benefit. And that's a nice little added benefit on top of just getting a huge dump of hit points added to your HP. Irresistible Offense. Expert or Warrior group, 20th level feats, non-repeatable. The damage you deal always ignores resistance. That's pretty big. That is like the Energy Mastery, except for everything. That is, the wording is different, but the function is the same. Yeah. Epic Boon of Luck. Expert group, that makes sense. 20th level feats, non-repeatable. Immediately after you roll a d20 for a d20 test, you can roll a d10 and add the number rolled to the test. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you roll initiative or finish a short or long rest. So they're doing these initiative roll refreshes on a lot of these feats, which is cool to see because that's not something you really had come up in Stock 5e previously. The Stock 5e version of this gave you a d10 to any ability check, attack, roll, or saving throw you make once per short rest. So it's more repeatable, really fitting of the name Epic Boon. I think it's good. I like the changes they're making to the Epic Boons now that I'm looking at them again, kind of refreshing on the original designs a little bit. Seeing how the kind of identity of rules in One D&D is shaping up to be. I'm liking it so far. All right, Epic Boon of the Night Spirit, 20th level feat, expert or mage group prerequisite, non-repeatable. While within dim light or darkness, you can become invisible as an action. You remain invisible until immediately after you take an action or reaction. I think the wording there is very specific, so it makes it clear that if you attack someone, you are invisible until after your attack is completed. That's actually interesting because if it's immediately after you take an action or reaction, if you take an action to make attacks, but you have extra attack, that's still part of the same action. So all of your attacks should benefit from being invisible, as opposed to just the first one that myself and a lot of other GMs rule by. So it could be specific just to this boon because it is listed on this boon and not on the invisible condition itself. But yeah, that's interesting. I think that would be really good. If that is a unique quirk of this boon, then I could absolutely see that being a great one to take when you hit level 20. The fact that it is infinitely repeatable just by taking an action, that's good stuff. That can be really useful, especially in higher tiers of gameplay where more utility is going to carry you a long ways as opposed to just combat power, pure damage output and stuff like that. Epic Boon of Peerless Aim. Expert or warrior group prerequisites, 20th level feats, non-repeatable. If you make a ranged attack against a target in range and miss, you can cause the attack to hit instead. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you roll initiative. So that is pretty much the same as the combat prowess, just for ranged attacks. It makes me think of Revolver Ocelot. Like, if anyone is familiar with the Metal Gear Solid series, this guy would use a revolver and he would shoot and he would ricochet the bullets to hit his targets a lot of times. And that's what this makes me think of, is you're firing, but maybe you're just ricocheting, or you're doing like a curving the arrow, like they would curve the bullets from the movie Wanted and all that good stuff. I think that was also had a comic book. Regardless, we're here to talk about D&D, not comics, not movies. That sounds like, honestly, a good feat to have, similar to the melee one as well. It sounds better than the plus 20 bonus you could add to a ranged attack in the classic version. I mean, if you're adding plus 20, you might as well just say you turn it into a hit, because that would turn most things into a hit. And if I used a short rest ability to add 20 to an attack and I still missed, I would be very upset as a player. This turning a miss into a hit is just a much cleaner, much more satisfying way of doing it. Moving on to Epic Boon of Recovery, 20th level feat, no prerequisite, non-repeatable. You can use a bonus action to regain a number of hit points equal to half your hit point maximum. That is big. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. Okay. That is a fitting recharge, I think, for such a potent self-heal. Especially considering the heal is a bonus action. Means you can still use your actual action to do other things, possibly more healing if you really need it. In addition, you succeed on every death saving throw that isn't a roll of 1. Wow, that is incredible. That is a huge benefit. That makes it a lot harder to take you down through death saving throws. Really ramps up your survivability across the board. Previously, this was a bonus action to regain half your hit point maximum once per long rest. So the top part is the same. The second part is new. And the second part is incredible. Epic Boon of Skill Proficiency. You are proficient in all skills. That is all they need to say. That is a big benefit, but it is a level 20 feat. That would be great for an expert like a rogue especially. But also rangers and bards. Let's see. Epic Boon of Speed. Your speed increases by 30 feet. Previous version already had that. This one is limited to expert and warrior group, however. And the previous version also made it to where you could use a bonus action to take the dash or disengage action once per short rest. So kind of stepping on the toes of the rogue a little bit. And also probably making the boon a little bit less interesting for rogues since they already have that benefit. Now it just increases the speed by 30 feet, but if you go from 30 to 60 feet at your base speed, that is a huge benefit, especially when you start considering how much you can dash. If you're a rogue, instead of going 90 feet, you're going an insane amount, 180 in one turn. That is a lot of movement. 90 is already a lot, but 180, even better. And if it is, like I had mentioned when we were going over the rogues features, if you can do that 4-dash turn that I mentioned as possibly being possible, not something I've ever had, not sure entirely how I would rule it, but that would be so much speed in one turn. Epic Boon of Undetectability. This is for experts only, level 20 feet, non-repeatable. You can't be seen or heard by any means, magical or non-magical, while you are hidden. So anything you do to hide, you cannot be tracked. True sight, you're still hidden. Any other special senses, you're still not seen or heard. So you're really thoroughly obscuring yourself with that boon. Previously, this was a +10 bonus to stealth checks, in addition to not being able to be detected or targeted by divination magic, including scrying sensors. But this expands it to a lot more potential things that you are fighting off by being hidden. So that is really cool. All right, let's see. Boon of the Unfettered. Expert or warrior group, 20th level feat, non-repeatable. As a bonus action, you can take the disengage action, which also ends the grappled and restrained conditions on you. So you will not be locked down by any means, and you can get away. Stock version of this, you gain advantage on ability checks to resist being grappled. In addition, you can use an action to automatically escape a grapple. This is so much more potent by giving you a bonus action disengage on top of having that disengage freely and grapple and restrain. So much better. Looks like we're moving out of the epic boons into fighting styles. So let me see if I can pull up some information on fighting styles real quick. I think what I'm going to have to do is maybe go to... we'll just zip around and see if we can find the information here quickly while we're going through. Archery fighting style gives a +2 to attack rolls you make with ranged weapons. That is the same as in the stock version. And these are first level feats, it's worth noting. Defense. While you are wearing armor, you gain a +1 bonus to armor class. That is the same. Dueling. When you are wielding a melee weapon in one hand and no other weapons, you gain a +2 bonus to damage rolls with that melee weapon. That is the same. Great weapon fighting. When you roll a 1 or 2 on a damage die for an attack you make with a melee weapon that you are wielding with 2 hands, you can re-roll the die and you must use the new roll. The weapon must have the two-handed or versatile property to gain this benefit. That is pretty much the same, I believe. Yeah, that is pretty much the wording is slightly different, but that is the same general benefit. Protection. Immediately after a creature you can see makes an attack roll and hits a target other than you that is within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to interpose your shield, imposing a -2 penalty on the attack roll, potentially turning it into a miss. You must be wielding a shield to use this reaction. So previously that was when a creature you can see attacks a target other than you as within 5 feet of you, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage. This is a -2 instead of disadvantage. It's diminishing the power of this fighting style a little bit, but I think it also does kind of make sense. Being able to use a reaction to impose disadvantage on a ton of attacks against, someone that you're next to is pretty powerful. Reducing it by 2 feels a bit light. I think that maybe they could turn that into a die roll or something, but as it is, I think it's still a worthwhile benefit to take. I would have to play with it a bit to really get a feel for if I still feel that way, though. And I am a particular fan of the protection fighting style. I like playing tanky characters that are able to protect others, so having that fighting style is something that is something I'm always interested in. Two-weapon fighting. When you make the extra attack of the light weapon property, you can add your ability modifier to the damage of the extra attack. Pretty much the same, just slightly differently worded, having to do with the new way they're wording things with One D&D. Grappler, strength or dexterity 13+. You're an accomplished wrestler, granting you the following benefits. Let me go back to the feats now that we're out of the fighting styles. And the epic boons. And get back to the normal feats. Strength or dexterity 13 requirement. Previously was only strength requirement. Now also requires dexterity. It's a 4th level feat, non-repeatable. Increases your strength or dexterity by 1, which previously it didn't have an ability score increase. You have advantage on attack rolls against a creature grappled by you. That is the same as the previous stock version. You aren't slowed when you move a creature grappled by you, provided the creature is your size or smaller. That is pretty cool. I really like that change. So you can grab someone and you can move full speed with them, no longer restricted to half your movement speed. I'm assuming that's how slowed works. I don't remember if that was in the previous playtest. Again, it was a while ago. I would have to look at it again. Maybe it's included in this one. So we'll see. Punch and grab. When you are hit by a creature with an unarmed strike as part of the attack action, on your turn, you can deal damage to the target when you hit, not when you are hit. That would be very different. You can deal damage to the target and also grapple it. You can use this benefit only once per turn. So you can strike someone and also grapple them in one move using this feat. I think that's huge. I think that's great. This is a incredible take on the grappler feat. Previously, you would be able to use an action to try to pin a creature grappled by you by making another grapple check, which would cause both you and the target to become restrained, which would give benefits to your allies for attacking this enemy, but would also give benefits to your enemies for attacking you. It was kind of a double-edged sword. Here, the feat is all benefits, and that's great. I think that's fantastic. Great Weapon Master, 4th level feat. Proficiency with any martial weapon is a prerequisite, and non-repeatable. You've learned to use the weight of a weapon to your advantage, letting its momentum empower your strikes. You gain the following benefits. Increased ability score. Increase your strength by 1, which is a new addition. Cleave. Immediately after you score a critical hit with a melee weapon or reduce a creature to 0 hit points with 1, you can make 1 attack with the same weapon as a bonus action. That is more or less the same as how this previously worked. And they also have Heavy Weapon Mastery. When you hit a creature with a heavy weapon as part of the attack action on your turn, you can cause the weapon to deal extra damage to the target. The extra damage equals your proficiency bonus, and you can deal it only once per turn. Previously, they did this thing where you would get you could set up an attack, basically. You could choose to take a -5 penalty to the attack roll, and you would add a +10 bonus to the attack's damage roll. Here, you're not gambling. You're just adding a flat bonus to your attack roll, to your damage roll, rather. And that bonus is equal to your proficiency, so this is also scaling as you level up. And it's used once per turn, so you're not doing this on every attack. So if you're a fighter doing this, being able to take -5 +10 to every attack would be a huge increase to your damage potentially. This is limited to once per turn, similar to Sneak Attack, and it scales on your proficiency, which I think is great. I think the more stuff they add that to scale on proficiency, the better. And they're already making a lot of good moves in that regard. So this is looking good. I like this change to Great Weapon Master. I feel like it won't be such a necessary feeling feat for a lot of people, but it will still be a huge boon to take. Which a feat should feel like a big benefit. So I think that's as it should be. Heavily Armored. 4th level feat. Requires medium armor training. Non-repeatable. Prerequisites the same. Obviously it didn't have the level requirements because they didn't really do that with feats in stock 5e. You have trained to use heavy armor effectively, gaining the following benefits. Increase your constitution or strength by 1. Previously, it was only strength. Now you can boost your con with it as well. And you gain heavy armor training, which is the same. The only change to this really is adding constitution to the ability score increase. Moving on from there, we've got Heavy Armor Master next. 4th level feat, heavy armor training required. That's the same. The 4th level obviously isn't. Non-repeatable. You can use your heavy armor to deflect strikes, granting you the following benefits. Similar to the previous feats, this adds constitution to the previously only strength increase. So you increase your constitution or strength by 1 to a maximum of 20. And you have damage reduction. When you're hit by an attack while wearing heavy armor, any bludgeoning, piercing, or slashing damage dealt to you by that attack is reduced by an amount equal to your proficiency bonus. Previously, it had the same effect, but it reduced it by a flat 3, regardless of anything. This, again, it has that scaling per level. I think that's incredible. Or not per level, but per proficiency. So that is incredible. That's a huge benefit. A great change to make this a feat that people might be more likely to take now. I know if I'm playing a tanky character, I would be more inclined to take this because it scales on proficiency. Inspiring Leader. This could be an interesting one. Wisdom or Charisma 13+. Previously just had a Charisma prerequisite. It's a 4th level feat, non-repeatable. You are adept at encouraging others, granting you the following benefits. Get an ability score increase for Wisdom or Charisma. That was not included in the previous version. And you have Encouraging Performance. At the end of a short rest or long rest, you can give an inspiring performance, a speech, a song, or a dance. When you do so, choose up to 6 friendly creatures, which can include yourself, within 30 feet of you who witness the performance. The chosen creatures each gain temporary hit points equal to 2d4 plus your proficiency bonus. Previously, this would be something you could spend 10 minutes doing, was unrelated to taking a short or long rest. You could target the same amount of creatures in the same amount of range, and you would get temporary hit points equal to your level plus your charisma modifier. Now it's 2d4 plus your proficiency bonus for temporary hit points. I think that works better. Obviously, getting a flat number, like something based on your level, is nice, but I mean, first of all, people like rolling dice. D&D players especially love rolling dice. So making a die roll makes sense. It's 2d4, which you're not going to, you're going to get more than you would get at lower levels, potentially. Oh, no, this is a 4th level feat now. So in the original version, you could get 1 plus your charisma modifier at level 1. Now you're at minimum of 4th level. So the dice you're getting won't take you as far as your level scaling would take you, but also it includes your proficiency bonus instead of your charisma modifier. So that will scale. So potentially, let's see, 8 plus 6, 14 bonus. You at level 20, the previous version would give you more than that, but this isn't so bad. And I like the fact that it's tied to a short or long rest, so you don't feel like you have to find time in the adventuring day to fit in a 10-minute stop to do this. And just flavor-wise, expanding it out to say that it is an inspiring performance, including speech, song, or dance, as opposed to just an inspiring speech, is nice for the flavor. All right, we're moving on to Keen Mind. That is a 4th level feat with a prerequisite of intelligence of 13 or higher. The previous version had no prerequisites of any kind. This is non-repeatable. You have trained to rapidly recall or discover vital details, granting you the following benefits. Increase your intelligence score by 1. That is the same as the previous version. Lore knowledge. Choose one of the following skills: Arcana, History, Investigation, Nature, or Religion. If you lack proficiency in the chosen skill, you gain proficiency in it, and if you have proficiency in it, you gain expertise in it. That is entirely new. And additionally, you have quick study. You can take the study action as a bonus action. Again, I am so curious to see what this study action does, because they've referred to it a few times now. And I believe it's something entirely new to 1D&D. I don't think it was included as an action in Stock 5e. So previously, Keen Mind would let you always know which way is north, always know how many know the number of hours left before the next sunrise or sunset, and be able to accurately recall anything you have seen or heard within the past month. I think that last point probably ties into the study action. It also kind of ties into the lore knowledge a little bit. So once we understand what the study action does, I think we'll have a better understanding of how all of these things that are referring to it operate properly. Moving on to Lightly Armored, we have a 1st level feat, no prerequisite, non-repeatable. You gain the following armor training: light armor, medium armor, and shield. Previously, this would just give you light armor, and it would also give you a strength or dexterity increase. So it's one of the interesting few that we've come across so far that don't give you an ability score increase, but it does increase the number of things you learn from it through the armor training. Moving on to Mage Slayer, another fun feat that can be really flavorful for characters. This requires proficiency with any martial weapon. It's a 4th level feat. It is non-repeatable. You have practiced techniques useful in battling magic users, gaining the following benefits: a strength or dexterity increased by 1. With Concentration Breaker, when you damage a creature that is concentrating, it has disadvantage on the saving throw it makes to maintain concentration. That is in line with what the previous version did. You also have Guarded Mind. If you fail an Intelligence, a Wisdom, or a Charisma saving throw, you can cause yourself to succeed instead. Once you use this benefit, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. The previous version would give you advantage on saving throws against spells cast by creatures within 5 feet of you. This, I feel like, is a lot more versatile in its use. Because you don't have to be right on the enemy, and you can, instead of giving advantage, you can automatically succeed. It's like you have your own kind of specialized legendary resistance of a sort. But it is once per long rest. The previous version wasn't as limited in that way. It wasn't limited to rests at all. But you did have to be within 5 feet of the target casting the spell. The previous version also would let you use your action to make a melee weapon attack against a creature within 5 feet of you that casts a spell. But I think the important part of Mage Slayer is that Concentration Breaker. That's kind of the big one. Getting a free attack against a spellcaster is a small part of what made the Mage Slayer feat, I feel like. So I feel like this is a good change. I like this. And I would be interested to try using it. I'm very curious to see how this one plays out with the changes to it. Medium Armor Master. 4th level feats. Medium Armor Training Prerequisite. Non-repeatable. You have practiced moving in medium armor to gain the following benefits. Increase your strength or dexterity by 1. That is new. Dexterous Wearer. When you are wearing medium armor, you can add 3 rather than 2 to your AC if you have a dexterity of 16 or higher. That could be a big benefit, because that means that people with a higher dexterity can make use of medium armor more often now. Could be a reason you might see rogues in medium armor more often. Previously, this worked more or less the same, but it also made it to where it didn't impose disadvantage on stealth checks. I like, it's interesting because I never see anyone use the medium armor master, but I feel like that slight increase could be pretty big to the AC on medium armor. But still, anytime I see someone who is I feel like there's very few cases where I see someone with 16 or higher dexterity that is using medium armor, because usually you can get an equal or better result with light armor without the stealth disadvantage that medium armors often give at the higher AC boosts. Let's see. Mounted Combatant. 4th level feat. Requires proficiency with any martial weapon, non-repeatable. You have developed a bond with your mounts, granting you the following benefits. Quite a lot here. Increase your strength, dexterity, or wisdom score by 1. Mount Handler. You have advantage on wisdom checks, animal handling, made to handle or train horses and other beasts employed as mounts. That appears to be new. Mounted Strike. While mounted, you have advantage on attack rolls against any creature that is within 5 feet of your mount and at least one size smaller than it. That changes a previous version of this feature. The previous version would have pretty much the same benefit, except not limited to being within 5 feet. So you could use reach-based weapons and still get that benefit. Now they have to be within 5 feet of your mount, so reach weapons you can't use, away from your mount and still get that mounted strike. You also have Leap Aside. If your mount is subjected to an effect that allows it to make a dexterity saving throw to take only half damage, it instead takes no damage if it succeeds on the saving throw, and only half damage if it fails. For your mount to gain its benefit, you must be riding it, and neither of you can be incapacitated. That is more or less the same. More or less the same as the stock 5e version of Mounted Combatant. And you also have Veer. While mounted, you can use your reaction to force an attack that hits your mount to hit you instead. Previously, that wasn't based on a reaction, but now it is. So you are slightly more limited in this version in some aspects, but you also get the mount handler feat. So for out of combat, when you're possibly in combat, if you have to make animal handling checks to handle your mounts or whatever, still useful. But out of combat, you can use it to train and such as well. And I've got to say, I really like the way that they're formatting the feats. I like giving names to the different perks. Makes it a little easier to refer to instead of just saying, oh yeah, it's the third bullet point. No, it's mounted strike. And so now someone can look for mounted strike and know exactly which paragraph they need to refer to. Moving on to observant. Actually, let me take a look. See how much more is here. Because what we might do... Let's see, spell lists, we're probably not going to really concern ourselves with. We kind of... I would be more interested in seeing the details of the spells as opposed to the spell lists. So I think we would kind of skip over that section. Rules glossary, I think we would kind of peruse this. Some of this I know is going to have been covered by the previous one. We do see there's spells listed in here as well. There's also going to be actions like the presumably like the search action and the jump action and stuff like that. So what I think we'll do, because we're getting to about 3 hours in, is we'll finish up this page that we're on. We're on Observant, I believe. So we'll finish up Observant. We'll start looking at Polearm Master, and then we'll probably call the session. The session. We'll call the stream there. But let's take a look at Observant first before we go anywhere. It's a 4th level feat. It has an Intelligence or Wisdom of 13 prerequisites, which the previous version had no prerequisites. It's non-repeatable. Quick to notice details around you. You gain the following benefits. Increase your Intelligence or Wisdom score by 1. That's in line with the previous version. You have Keen Observer. Choose one of the following skills: Insight, Investigation, or Perception. If you lack proficiency with the chosen skill, you gain proficiency in it, and if you have proficiency in it, you gain expertise in it. That is entirely new take to what this feat did. And with Quick Search, you can take a search action as a bonus action. Again, we're going to have to figure out what this search action does, but we'll do that a little bit later on. The next time we jump into finishing up this expert classes breakdown. Previous version of Observant would give you that ability score increase. It would let you understand what someone is saying as long as you can see their mouth while they're speaking. Even if you can't hear them, you could read their lips. And it would give you a +5 bonus to passive perception and passive investigation scores. This no longer does that, either of those quirks, but search action or possibly just either any of these skills could be considered being related to reading lips. And gaining proficiency will also increase your passive. So you can see kind of the through line there that relates this to how it previously worked. And finally, we'll check out Polearm Master, which is a pretty popular feat. It's a 4th level feat, has a proficiency with any martial requirement, any martial weapon prerequisite, and it is non-repeatable. You have trained extensively with pole weapons that have reach, granting you the following benefits. You have a strength increase by 1, which is entirely new to the feat. You have Pole Strike. Immediately after you take an attack action and attack with a weapon that has the heavy and reach properties, you can use a bonus action to make a melee attack with the opposite end of the weapon. The weapon's damage die for this attack is a d4, and it deals bludgeoning damage. Previously, they specifically referred to they referred to specific weapons. Having them refer to properties now opens them up to expanding weapon lists in the future that will still gain benefits from this feat, and I think that is a much better cleaner way of doing it. But the pulse strike feature otherwise operates pretty much the same as the previous version, with the opposite end of the weapon dealing a d4 bludgeoning. That is entirely in line. Reactive strike: while you're holding a weapon that has the heavy and reach properties, you can use your reaction to make one melee attack against a creature that enters the reach you have with that weapon. So again, that this version trades out the specific list of weapons to a more broad property-based restriction. Again, for the same reasons as the pulse strike, much better choice. The previous version of this part of the feat would let you would cause creatures to provoke an opportunity attack when they enter your reach with that weapon. This pretty much works the same, but it's specifically not worded as an opportunity attack. It is more... Interestingly, it is using your reaction to make a melee attack against a creature functions the same as an opportunity attack, but this won't relate to anything that specifically relates to opportunity attacks. So that's an interesting change. I'm curious to see if there is a reason for making that change. If there is stuff that relates to opportunity attacks further in this document, we'll have to see. I think what I'll do is, like I said a minute ago, we're going to go ahead and call the stream here. That's going to be about it for this one. But we will pick up with more of this, I think, next week when I put out my schedule on Twitter and in my Discord server that some people are in. You will see when next week I will be delving into this again. It's not related to D&D, but keep an eye out tomorrow. Is it tomorrow? No, not tomorrow. Keep an eye out on Friday for a collab that I'm taking part in Minecraft. Oh, Zero G, you missed the whole thing. Oh no, you're cooking dinner. I hope it was at least good food. You also missed our first ever raid by another channel, which was pretty incredible. I'm not used to getting such incredible treatment. Not used to being so fortunate as to being raided, but it was great to see all these new people, and I'll definitely have to check these people, see about following some others. Speaking of raids, I think we should probably do that. We've got some people here. Let's whoops, I need that open. Let's go ahead and find... Let me see who I've got going right now. I don't think we're going to jump into another D&D. We're going to jump to some friends who are streaming. Let's see here. All right, let's go check out Vector Spaceman. If you haven't checked out Vector Spaceman, we're gonna jump on over there real quick with a bit of a raid and see how he's doing. And let's go in just a second here. Man, I don't even know about catchphrases. Just say what's up. It's the spaceman. I don't know.